What's up, everyone? Zebulon Krol.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely, man. It's good to be here.
So pumped.
Yeah, this is nice. This is a vibe.
This is a vibe.
Yeah.
It's also the vibe with So Grateful. Evan Bliss was just like,
If I could bring
Yeah,
a dream
he's a special one, man. That kid, I like him a lot.
I wouldn't have to wake
He's a
up.
good person, a good people. Good people.
he is a good
He
people.
is good people
Yes.
and a good person.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have the optimal, I would say, first Los Angeles up-and-coming artist on the show.
Oh, is that me?
That's you.
Oh, really?
Because Evan
Wow.
was our first show,
Okay.
and we did a lot of, and then also we have a little bit of some cool software to be able to kind of demo and show you some of his more nuanced technicalities to the actual production of
Right.
the stuff.
Right.
So we'll be showing you that as well. Pumped. Zeb, we love to start things off with journeys. Walk. Yes. Well, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah,
This is
yeah.
this
No,
is an
go ahead.
intense
Yeah,
one for my brother Zeb.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
I'm ready for it. Yeah. So there's get pumped. Okay. Journey stuff. We had a little birth to 18. We had in Steamboat, Colorado.
Right. So, so I was actually born in, if you can imagine, a place called Boone. That's exactly what it is. Like, finally, that's actually a good place to start. Actually, I was just in Colorado for my grandmother's memorial service, and it was the night before the thing, and me and my cousin, are like pretty emotional dudes, and like and she was a really big deal. She was like the matriarch of the family. She kind of like held everything together, and we were drinking, like we were like, oh, dude, not looking forward to tomorrow, kind of in a way, because we were preparing for like the sadness of it all. And he was like, we just got to keep going, like stay with, like come to my house, let's do pool or whatever. Like I just got to stay up. I don't want to be alone. And I was like, dude, I really should get to bed. Like, I'm playing a song at the memorial service. I kind of had to be on point for the PA and stuff to help out. And he's like, I'll make you a deal. I'll take you to the house you were born in if you stay up with me. So he's really good on that kind of stuff. So he drove me all the way to and I've been putting that off for years. Like I just kind of, because I knew it, like I was actually born in this house, and at the time, like some of the exterior walls weren't even finished and stuff, like super ratchet, like just super ghetto. So I'd been putting it off, but I kind of knew I should go like revisit that space. Yes. But I was only there for 3 months probably before we moved to Steamboat. But so technically born in Boone, which again looks exactly how it sounds, and then Steamboat Springs was, where I kind of cut my teeth and stuff. So.
Walk us through the journey of growing up, and then how you even got interested in the North Star of music production.
Okay, yeah. So there was always a guitar around the house. So I started playing guitar when I was about 6. So I kind of always knew I wanted to do music. But yeah, my home life and like how I was raised was like really tricky, because we were super poor, and Steamboat's like this super affluent community, right? It's a ski resort, in the Rocky Mountains, beautiful, like paradise, basically. But, I was raised in a trailer park, and, our trailer court just happened to be like kind of the rough, like the weirdest one where like, everyone seemed to be alcoholics. There's like a lot of, domestic abuse, and it was like super weird. But yeah, it was tricky, like trying to get through that and navigate it, was hard. And like, it really, and I struggled with depression, and it was a really ugly situation. And like I was telling you that story about like my first car, for instance. So I'm working at
good story. Yeah.
So I'm working at this restaurant, and I always worked really hard. Like I always had like a work ethic, and I had a lot of like pride in wanting to, kind of prove myself. Like I'm not my circumstances, I'm better than that or something. Anyway, so my boss is like, dude, you're the best. Like you're the coolest. You always kick ass. I will, like I heard you've been having trouble like getting to band practice and stuff. And I was like, yeah, it's been tough. Like, And he was like, well, listen, I have a car that's in my field, you know, like he lived on a ranch or whatever. And he's like, if you can get this car to start, it's yours. And so I got out there and like, sure as shit, we like figured out how to get it going. And it was a 1984 Caprice Classic, like body by Fisher, like mobbing old school kind of thing. And of course I could put like this great stereo system in it, and I like spray painted Brown Betty on the hood and like named it, and like kind of made a joke out of the fact that it was like a piece of shit. And like I was going to school with kids that literally had, one of these kids at our school had 5 different cars, like including like a cherried out old, you know, Chevy, and then he had like a Defender 90, you know, he had like, you know, he had an Audi, the whole thing, and which is fine, you know, like
stark wealth inequality.
It was just and I think that's just tricky for like as a kid, like as a, you know, because everything's the end of the world when you're a kid, you know, and it really hurts your feelings when you're like driving, you know, like I'm literally driving out of this trailer park in this shitty car, like to this, you know, this symbol of like affluence, which is this beautiful ski mountain every morning, like, and that's how I start my day, just being like, fucking like, this is embarrassing, like I'm going closer and closer, like further and further away, like into this, you know,
Wow.
community I kind of had nothing to do with. Like I was like this third class citizen there, you know, and like we weren't all in it together, you know, like I got along with everyone pretty well, but it was hard, you know, it was hard to just like get invited to a party and show up and be like, and then go back home to this and be like, fuck, man, this is rough. Like this is, yeah, it was like, you know, it messes with your ego a lot. It messes with like, you know, and what is it all about? And like,
Yeah.
Anyway, so tricky there. And definitely started getting into like, you know, really lashing out, like super bad behavior. Again, I was saying I'd struggle with depression and stuff. And it manifested in a lot of bad ways, you know, definitely abusing alcohol. I was, you know, selling drugs, you know, mostly cannabis or whatever. Some other stuff there, you know, breaking and entering. Like it was, I definitely got to a very dark spot. And thankfully, music really like pulled me out of it. And that was the hugest piece. Is like I finally, you know, I was in this band that we kind of formed in middle school, and I knew I really wanted to do music, but I think there was always this attitude too of like, I want to figure out how to make money. And I think that's where a lot of the bad behavior came from, was like, okay, if I can sell enough drugs, then I can get a new car, or I can get the music gear I want, or, you know, and I always did. Again, I always had that like hustle mentality, and I worked a lot of straight jobs too, and I made pretty decent money doing that. But I was always, you know, I think the volume was turned down so much from just seeing some of the stuff I saw at the trailer park with, you know, literally just like people getting knocked around in like broad daylight and stuff. And I felt so like uncomfortable a lot that like moving into doing those really bad behaviors wasn't that big of a leap. You know, it was like a comfortable thing almost, because I was already so uncomfortable anyway. So when it came to like, oh, I could use that to my advantage, like I'm not afraid of any of this, and maybe I can get some money out of it, and then maybe I can like close that gap, that discrepancy between, you know, these people that, you know, the haves and me being like the have not. Like maybe I can be more on their level if I can, you know, figure out some scheme. But anyway,
one of my favorite aspects to all of the guests that we've interviewed is there's a pattern, there's an archetype of trauma to treasure in essence, and it's we talk about this in High Level Perception chapter 2 C theory a lot, that the more that at times that these roots reach down to hell, like Carl Jung said, that the more that the fruits can reach up to the heavens. And so you have this very interesting bifurcation that occurred in your life, as so many people have, where there was this moment where you could potentially see yourself in your possibility space have ended up more in the lines of being involved with things that are less fruitful for yourself, your family, your community, the world at large. But you had this star of music production, which kind of you gravitate towards that, and you like that lights the fire under your butt more. And then so how did you end up figuring out that it was, you know, you said you had the guitar at home, so there was kind of this constant music vibe in a sense. Is that kind of what?
Like, well, and again, I feel like honestly, I always knew I wanted to do music, and I think that was another thing of like, okay, maybe this is a scheme where I can like out of middle school, and I was starting to get into high school, but I came out of middle school with some really intense experiences, like we were talking about, like these situations where life gets super real, and like I use the word like hot, or like it feels like really crazy, and you're like, oh my god, especially when you're getting in trouble, right? So I think I had enough of those experiences, especially broke into this house, we were stealing guns, and I had a gun in my hand, and I'm standing in someone else's house, and it was crazy. Like I was like, how is this my life? How is this even, like, what is this? Like, why is this my life? You know, it felt like a movie or something. And we're leaving, and I hear a noise, and I'm like, and then all of a sudden I'm like, it's almost like an out of body experience where I'm like watching myself pull this gun, and you know, potentially could have like super hurt myself, hurt someone else. Like, there was nothing good about it. And I think that was one of those moments where I was like, holy, like that feels terrible. Like I never, like that's so, and it was really helpful because it was like, okay, anytime there's any inkling of that feeling, it's like run the other direction. Like, and it kind of, and it was like, and it was a kind of a reset. Like I kind of feel like there's a new part of me that like came online because of that, like really intense feeling. You know, and like we were saying earlier, like it almost felt like I was on drugs. Like I've never smoked crack, but it felt like I'm like imagining that's what it. Oh my god!
Hot.
Like just bzz, like, and just like everything sounds weird or feels weird. Like, whew, and like just adrenaline, like pure adrenaline, like just way too like OD on adrenaline, right?
A very clear bifurcation in that scenario where you can literally see the path to hell and the path to heaven, to suffering and to well-being also.
Well, that's a really interesting way to put it. I never even thought of it that way, but I think you're right. It's almost like maybe that sensation is almost like what it feels like to peer down those things, like, and really be like, okay, what is it? What is it going to be? Like, you have to decide right now, you know, like, and it's like this split moment thing. Luckily, nothing happened. And it's crazy to me. Like, I've never been arrested. I've never... Like, nothing has ever really gone wrong. Like, no one died, and you know, no one ever really got hurt around me. Like, there's never been something really, really terrible, which, like, so lucky, I feel like, considering all the crazy shit I've done. So, anyway, so I got out of that, and I think that was, that was like a big moment of like, okay, let's do this music thing. Let's like focus on these positive things in my life, and you know, and make this happen. Like, get out of here, because it was like a nightmare kind of lifestyle, like always nervous. Like there was just like a block of ice in my stomach. Like hated going home, hated going to school, always, you know, just uncomfortable and sad and scared and angry. It was like, oof. So it was like, okay, how do I get out of this? And then every time I would get sucked into music, it took me in this, like I was, you know, it was kind of an escape. It literally, you know, I was like reaching into this, you know, wherever all the songs are, I was like reaching into that place and grabbing songs, and like being there was so much better than being where I was. And so I just kept focusing on that and pushed really hard, ended up getting into Berkeley, and then that was kind of the big relief, is like getting to Boston.
Okay, so let's unpack. So we have you also were talking about this before we started. I love this a lot. It's this sort of, the story isn't told so often about someone that really is immersed in a shitty, like a hard, really hard upbringing of lots of suffering, and that is able to do that imaginative envisioning of a North Star that can basically suck them, draw them out, light the fire under their butt to get them out of the suffering scenario, and that then they can, in a sense, achieve these higher level fruits that they can use for themselves, their family, their community, to kind of uplift more and more people, be an example. I love that. Sure. And then for you, that ended up being the Berklee College of Music in Boston, kind of as your next music production step.
Yeah, and I think, and I was finally out, right? Like I finally like made it out. I figured out a way to get out of there, and it was for a good reason, and it felt like it made sense. It wasn't just, you know, whatever. Yeah. Like it wasn't like a shift to the side. It was like literally an upgrade. But yeah, I think just to speak on what you're just talking about, I think, that one, I think a lot of credit needs to be given to people that can just get out of the situation they're in, because it takes being a visionary. I mean, I think you have to be able to imagine whatever the goal you have. If you can visualize it, like if you can make it happen in your mind, then you can make it happen. And something as, you know, simple as getting out of the trailer park or getting out of the hood, I think people need a lot of credit for that. Like, because and I think it takes the same, it's that same skill of like being able to create, Disney World, envisioning this crazy thing and like actually having it finally come to fruition. I mean, after he passed, but still like that ability is it's the same thing. That's the same ability that creates anything is being able to think it first and let that take over your actual reality and manifest. And it's no small feat. And I think encouraging people to do that and giving people credit and kind of normalizing the fact that stuff has happened to a lot of people. I think like every time I tell these stories, there's always a part of me that's like, man, there's coming some stigma that's going to be attached to it. People might look at me different. And I'm sure some people do, but I think it's super, it's like a disservice to themselves to do that, to look at me different because of my past.
There's a whole suite of other people that look at you more authentically as well, and also people that become more comfortable with them themselves sharing their stories and trajectories and traumas that have then birthed treasures.
Well, when I really think that
You're
that's
an inspiration in that sense.
Well, good. Well, and I hope so. And I think, and not to toot my own horn or whatever. Like, I mean, there's people that have way worse situations that have come way further, but just encouraging that. Yes. And not stigmatizing those people. That's like loving, yes. And I think it's so sad when the opposite of that happens. And yeah, people need to be really careful about that. And like, I see it all the time where it's like, ooh, well, don't hang out with that person, or like, oh, don't, be around that or whatever. And even phrases where people are like, oh, well, if you hang out with, all these people that have a certain net wealth, that's going to tell you what like amount of money you're going to end up with. And I understand that in theory. I do. And I think, yeah, of course you want to be around people that are helping bolstering you up and not pulling you down. But I think it's also really important that we love up the people that need love. And sometimes, the people that maybe even deserve love the least are the ones that need it the most. And being friends with your enemy, kind of like all that, like, acceptance of other people and like just giving space and caring about people that might not be at your level or whatever. And hoping that they want to better themselves and not condemning them, and yeah, anyway, so when I tell those stories, it's always a little uncomfortable, but it's like I kind of feel like I should, because I know there's a lot of other people that and everyone has their struggle, and that's okay too. Like that's another part of it, is like at whatever level, even if you're grow up super affluent, like some of the kids in Steamboat that did have the most like privilege or whatever, some of them had like the hardest path, because it was because they had their own set of crazy stuff that they had to work through. Right. Yep. And anyway, so.
Yep. Thanks for bringing up all that nuance to it, because it is that multivariate. Now, when you find yourself, because I think a lot of the people that we've interviewed that have went to the Berklee College of Music have been attempting to sort of break down why it's so profound. A lot of people don't know because they're not really like polymathic and trying to like dive into the U.S.'s best music schools.
Right.
And so my sort of idea would be unpack why, because Berklee's so interesting, because like as we've interviewed people from there, it's not just music production. You also have people that are doing crazy things like mixed reality, like XR type stuff, VR, AR, and music at the same time. So walk us through and how profound that was.
Yeah. So it's pretty simple. I think the easiest way to break down Berklee or talk about why it's a special place is, there should be more places like it actually, but basically it's the premier music college for contemporary music on the planet. Like there's nothing else that even comes close to it, because most schools are either, Juilliard, you're going to be doing jazz, classical, and it's a fantastic school, obviously. Berklee is super focused on what's cutting edge, and you have to have, and they have a lot of interesting rules. Like you have to have a principal instrument, and everything's about making like modern music. Mm-hmm. So the focus is a lot different, and the capability is all there, right? Like, cause you have people doing music production and engineering. You have all these studios everywhere, different shapes and sizes, and and practice rooms everywhere. So it's just like this crazy, and you do have great jazz musicians and classical musicians as well, and they do that, but it's like everyone's together and like mixing all these different genres together and all their different skills together. So it's really like crazy how it like just being in there was nuts. And it was, there's a lot of good stuff about it, but there's also a lot of bad stuff about it for me, because I definitely was super intimidated. I don't feel like I had the tools to like really get as much out of it as I could have, because I just came off of like, you know, like literally being, you know, like my whole universe was flipped upside down. I went from living in a trailer to living on one of the most expensive streets in the world. Like I was on Commonwealth Avenue, which is like gorgeous. Like every place next to me was like $1 million flat, which was like a dream come true. It was really cool. But again, it was just like, holy shit, you know, like, and I think it hit me with like, oh, you're not good enough. And like, so my depression actually ramped up a lot. I think in high school, I was kind of in revenge mode, and like I was motivated to like, you know, to fight the system back kind of or something. And then when I hit Berkeley, I think my depression kind of went into full swing. So that was interesting too. It was like, there was a lot of good stuff about it, but it was so hard for me to like, I was still I was just finally processing all this stuff, right? Because I finally had like separation from that space. So anyway, it was interesting. But yeah, the point on the school is just that it's just, I think it's just so much more forward thinking than any other college. I mean, I know Belmont has a songwriting degree. Berkeley has a songwriting degree. I think there might be like one other new college that has that. That's the degree I have. But, you know, there's not a lot of places you can go to get these things. And I think they did a relatively good job. I mean, college is way too expensive. Of course. And that's like a whole other conversation. But I think as colleges go, they had a lot of great faculty, you know, and they had some duds too. I mean, everyone does, but yeah, I think it's a really special place just because of the facilities, and really, I think the biggest thing is the students it attracts. Like that's the hugest thing. The peers, the people I met there, outweigh anything my professors ever said, outweigh any studio time I ever got. It was like those kids, like some of the kids I've gotten to interact with and collaborate with, those are the ones that like I was like, okay, it's like. And again, those were some hot moments too, like way more positive and less like terrifying, but definitely like, okay, are you gonna step up your game, or like are you gonna jump in with the wolves, or are you gonna go chill, you know, and like just kind of sit back, you know, like again, everyone makes their choices on that stuff, but I definitely was, you know. But, you know, and I got scared away a few times. There was a few, like, there's a few teams I couldn't get into, right? There's a few, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because some of them, you know.
Super high level.
Oh, my God. It was like as competitive as it could get. You know, and people getting, like, pulled out of during their college career to, like, go be, you know, on the professional level, like, all the time. You know, so you'd be like, oh, he left? And like, yeah, he's on tour with so-and-so. And it's like, oh, my God.
Wow.
You know, so.
Yeah, so that's literally like an analogy to when you're playing basketball at the collegiate level and you get drafted right into the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's funny. I think, and I kind of get in trouble for this a lot, but I think music, in terms of, I compare musicians and music to sports a lot more. A lot of people are like, well, no, but it's so different, and it's like, but, you know, and they're like, who's the best? And I'm like, who made the most baskets? You know, like everyone's like, who's the best musician? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I kind of have to go with Jay-Z. Like he's Michael Jordan. He made the most baskets. Like he just crushed it. I don't know. And again, you can have your subjective opinion about it, but like objectively, like if you had to like make a case, I'm like, you know, everyone's like, oh, but it's not like that because it's music and it's creative. And I'm like, it kind of is though. Like I don't know what to tell you. You know, but you can't even play. Oh man,
I know. I agree, and I want more people to analogize music with sport, because art is sport and sport is art, and I like holding them as separate. Sure. And I like holding them as one at the same time. Like we have to be able to hold, like in a very metaphysical way, we talk about this a lot, like you have to be able to hold the oneness of everything at the same time as you hold your individuality. Right. And so you have to be simultaneous when you make these analogies and things, so you can keep music and sport separate, and you can blend them together into a synthesis at the same time.
Yeah, I think they're super comparable, and I think that's why I like hip hop so much, is because they embrace that, like they embrace the competition of it, and they reference each other, which I think is super cool. Like I think that should happen more in other music. You know, all the existentialists did that. You know, they would all like kind of poke fun at each other, and like, you know, it was you know, and I think that, I don't know, I think to me that's really, really cool. And yeah, it's funny when people are like, "Oh, you're biting my style and stuff." It's like that should be a compliment to you. Like if someone's like influenced by you or whatever. And like, and what a kind of like loser mentality thing to say. Like if someone was biting my style, like once and if I get my style established, and they do something, you know, I think the only response I would want to have is like do like kind of and then go back like crush them hard, be like, oh, okay, that's okay, I see what you're doing there, and then just you know, just like drop something that kind of pushes back to be like, okay, like now the ball's in your court again, let's go. Like and there's and I think that's a cool thing. Like I think that's a good thing. But
it's mimesis, it's combinatorics, it's, you know, somebody taking what you made and adding their creative spin, and then you being grateful that somebody recognized how cool of a thing you made, and then somebody else adds their spin on it, and you analyze that, you add your own spin. It's like this never-ending process of people becoming more and more artistic and expressing themselves.
Well, and that's what it is. Like that's just what it is. Like that's how stuff grows too. Like that's a really interesting way for things to grow, and for us to push each other. And I mean, and it's just, and it's so funny when people like think that
it's
is
very
like,
much like DNA as well, how it has.
Well, and just, I mean, and just like the simple fact that we are standing on the shoulders of the people that came before us. It doesn't matter what you do. And it's like, I didn't invent the guitar. So it's like, I can't, you know, and everyone's like, well, isn't that like cheating, or isn't it, you know, like with different techniques or like sampling music, for instance, was this big one. It's like, it's like, are you kidding me? Like let's just keep going. Like just keep stacking on top of each other. Like, why are we trying to be like, well, wait a second, like I'm going to call foul here. It's like, nah, just go, just run to the next thing, because you know it's we're not going to run out. Like there's this infinite thing, and trying to get that next awesome surprising sound, or like you know, like even breaking a new genre, like that's possible, but it's not going to happen if we're all like trying to, you know, hold each other back like crabs in a bucket, you know. Like, it's stupid. Anyway, let's ramp in, because we did on Berklee College of Music. You're having this really enriching, flowering experience that also had its own roots and shadow at the same time. Sure.
And you saw these paths of like the pros getting like drafted into the NBA and like stuff like that. And so you kind of like, you know, saw your star becoming more and more kind of unveiled. Like you saw it appearing more and more of where your trajectory. And so when exactly did the transition happen from Boston to Los Angeles? And then how did that transition lead you into the production of True North, which was your EP?
Okay, sure. So basically, I was trying to make bands work throughout Berklee. After Berklee, I was in a band called Morning Old Sport. We got signed to a record label in Colorado. We went out there, we recorded, but basically my whole Berklee experience was like peppered with failure. You know, like I never got drafted. I never, you know, like I never was quite there. I was never able to quite get a band off the ground in Boston. We went to do this thing in Colorado that like imploded on itself, because we were all living together in this like crazy mansion. It was amazing. We had a 24-hour lockout to this ridiculous studio, and like with the other lead singer, like they wanted to play cards for 6 hours a day and like and record like 2, and which is fine. Like again, I was like, shoot, but it just, again, I didn't know how to cope with it. I didn't know how to deal with it. And that's really the first time I was like heavily relying on my own production to like stay sane. So I set up my computer in my room, and when, you know, people were messing around and doing their thing, I was just trying to like focus on, okay, so how do I figure out how to do this so I don't need to rely on anyone, basically.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is I can like easily blame people or whatever, but the fact of the matter is, I didn't know how to cope with it. I could have obviously been a better communicator, but at the end of the day, like band dynamics, I just never was able to figure it out. So that helped push me, you know, in on myself. Being in that studio, working by myself, like starting to really develop some of these skills, that was huge. Thing implodes. Move home to Steamboat for a while. I was living at this really cool house, actually. I had a cool studio set up there. That was feeling good. Progress. Then I call up my buddy from Berklee, this kid, Matt Weber, who's amazing. And I was like, hey, can you mix this song? And he's like, no, I want to produce with you. Like, we need to make, like, this is amazing. Like, listen to this thing I'm building. And I was like, I didn't even know you were producing it now. Yeah. And he's like, yeah. Like, let's do this. So he's actually who got me into Ableton.
Cool.
Yes, I was in Logic, which is a DAW. It's like a what you build music in
Digital
for.
audio workstation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And so Logic is one DAW, and Ableton is a different software.
yeah, it's
DAW.
yeah. So and they're all pretty the same. Like Pro Tools. It's just whichever software you're working in. And anyway, he was in Ableton at the time, and he was like, well, what do we do? Because we weren't going to try to do cross-platform. And I was like, you know what? I think I want to learn Ableton. Like, let's go that direction. And it was really cool because he had, he'd already built up this really awesome workflow and stuff. So I was able to pick it up really fast. And we were like, screw it. Like, let's move in together. So I moved to LA first, just because I knew I'd want to be there. I didn't want to like stay in Colorado too long, which it was nice to be there though for a second. It was like nice to like get us. I was like, oh, this like huge thing I thought was going to go, didn't go. And I was like, dang it. And then, but it was nice. I like got to kind of lick my wounds. And then I was like, okay, I'm ready to go back out. So I'm in LA.
Yep.
Me and Matt are passing things back and forth. He's in New York. I go visit him out there. We have a really good time. He comes out here. We have a really good time. And then he's like, you know what? I'm ready to leave. Like, I love New York, but I'm like, it's time. So he moved out here, and we tried, and we got really, really close. And actually, some of the songs on the EP we started together. So like he has a lot of credit on this album, and like we really developed that sound. Yeah, it was really nice, and like what an awesome teammate. But again, it was like the band dynamic stuff. Like we couldn't quite work it out. It was definitely like the best breakup of like. You know what I mean? Like it was like so
great
like,
collab.
and it was definitely like way better communication and stuff. But it's still hard. And one, it's because it's so emotional. It's like you're marrying this person, right? It's and you're like, and you keep being and every day you're like, here's my soul, and they're like, what if we do that? And you're like, oh, like it's very it's tricky. Like it's a tricky thing. And especially when you're struggling and there's no budget, and you know what I mean, and no one's getting paid, so it's like there's some resentment that can happen. It's just tough. It's tough. So that falls apart. That we decided to go our separate ways, and then that's when everything kind of really clicked in. Like I like as that was happening, I kind of finally got a hold of this last workflow thing. And then I was like, oh, this is going to work. Like, this is a path. Like, now I know how to get from point A to point B. And the first thing that kind of let me know that was the song Plane, which is still probably the best song on that album. Or, or it got the best attention. Right. So that was like the first thing I was like, oh, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. And I think, that song kind of made me realize, like, that kind of like instigated the, like, I need to move on, because there just wasn't any room in that process for someone else. Yeah. And that process was very much me reaching into myself and just trusting that. So like, that's what really like changed everything. And I think that's why I wanted to call the album True North, is because it was like, if I can just remember this, that's all I need. I just have to remember to like really reach in and like in 100% trust whatever I find out there. And, and just remember that, again, it also helped push the theory I had and like kind of solidify it more, that I think all the songs are out there and they're finished, and I'm not someone that creates stuff. I'm someone that discovers things. Yeah. And so reaching was like a lot easier to do when I was untethered to anything else, and I didn't have to answer to anyone or collaborate with anyone. I just went. Yeah. And now collaborating is really fun, but it's still like, based off of a platform of something I've already found, and like, it's just easier to manage when it's like my solo project. So the collaborating becomes it's like a lot less. Of course. Yes. Yeah. There's a lot less weight to it. It's just fun, and like it just adds something nice, and like it doesn't have to be. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. It's not like this. Oh, we have to make this work as a team. Whatever. So, but yeah, that was a huge moment. But I love that. But that's really what pushed me toward. And I always felt like I had that sense. Like I always knew, like, oh yeah, like, and I've always had that theory, like, oh, we don't. I remember talking about this in college, like, oh well, it's like all the songs are done and you got to find them, and like, and I remember, but when I really was doing it at this like different level, all of a sudden, that happened during Plane. And I'll never forget that night. I was like in this, I finally had my room was like sounding a lot better. I did some like treatment. Me and Matt were like kind of deciding maybe we wouldn't work together anymore. And I just went into like this other world, like, and then I was like, okay, that, like, if I just got to keep doing that over and over. Yeah. But it's so trial and error, like, and again, I had this theory that it would work, and then yeah, it was kind of like, yeah, like speaking like visionary kind of thing, right? It was like I envisioned this thing of me like going into another planet, and then I finally arrived there, and you know, sure as shit, that was like the best song I've ever written. I was like, oh, there it is, there's the song. Okay, I wasn't crazy. Like, it proved the theory a little bit for me, you know, like, but anyway, so, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'm really like how you in a sense you kind of like you anchored True North as your cornerstone that you could always come to as your first like pivotal.
I love that you use cornerstone because like on the cover there's this rock formation, right? That's literally behind my sister's house. And I had this really cool conversation with my sister's husband, and because he was born there. He was born right, and like it was so crazy. His parents' house is like right here, and the house right next to them goes on the market, and it's like perfect. It was like perfect for the family, perfect size, perfect lot, everything. So he literally bought their second home is literally walking distance from where he was raised.
Yeah.
And it's like it's so beautiful, and the kids get to be there, and like they have a little sledding hill, whatever. So
awesome.
So we were talking about it, and he's like, you know, we thought about maybe buying a house in Steamboat or different places, but Needle Rock always meant so much to me because my dad always said, no matter what happens, like you come back here, like this is the spot, like, you know, like X marks the spot, like this rock is our.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And it was like, whew, that hit me like, I'll never, that, like, I was just like, oh my God. Like everybody just like hit me with an arrow in my heart, and it was just like pouring. I was just like, God, that's so beautiful. Like, it's like, yeah, it's hard to even like say it out loud because it like chokes me up. But
I love it.
It's so it's just so beautiful. Well, and I think
so. It's called Needle Point.
Needle Rock.
Needle Rock.
Right. And
Needle Rock is the rock that's on the True North album cover.
Right. So So I wanted to integrate that because of that conversation, and because you know
so cool. X marks the spot. Or
right.
Come back here.
Right. And I think there's such a and that's a similar thing.
Yeah.
Right. And like and I feel the same way with music. Right. If I ever lose my way, I just have to remember to go to that place and grab, like get inside myself, like really go to that spot. And I feel like, I do. I feel like I was like, on the moon and like, putting a flag, like, okay, just remember where that flag is if you ever get lost. So, there was definitely a similarity between those two things. But I think the other reason why that rock thing hits me so hard is just because, like, I think that was something I always lacked as a kid. And it's so cool to hear him like describe it because he had that, and he was like offering it to me. He's like, "This is ours now. Like, you're part of this family, and like this is your rock too."
Yeah. And
I was like, "Oh, thank God!"
Wow.
I kind of feel like I have a home.
Exactly. Beautiful.
So, yeah, it's big.
I'm a huge fan of the word cornerstone. I put it in the chapter 2 seed theory and high level perception that in that sort of first compound zone of the seed, the human being birthed into the world, and in the first couple of years, those sort of moments that are so pivotal, those are cornerstone moments. And if you can anchor, in a sense, your artistic essence as a cornerstone in an album, to you, what your EP is, North Star, as yours, is kind of like your True North, your North, I call it North Star. What my kind of North Star anchor point, in a sense, is for me is high level perception, this artistic synthesis that I just made, that I'm always kind of trying to like come back to and put frame. So it's so beautiful in a sense, like being able to make these really artistic expressions of our soul and as anchor points, as cornerstones.
Yeah, and I think it's such a it's such a profound thing for everyone to, and everyone says it different, but like I really, I went on this thing and I had this trip and I found myself. And I think to me, how I translate that is what you're really finding is your entry point into every, like you're finding your way of getting into tapping into all of this shit, like to be, you're finding your doorway into connecting with everything. Because so many people describe it the same way. They're like, once I found myself, I realized, I'm not that important, but I am, like I'm just part of this whole thing. And so, and I always push on people, and I'm like, what do you mean by when you found yourself? And like almost every time it's some it's some version of explaining, well, now I feel like connected with everything, and now I feel like I'm a part of this place.
Yes.
And so to me, like, finding your, and that's the thing. It's so specific. Everyone has their own entry point. And until you find that, like, it sucks. Like, it's not, it's a hard place to be.
So in the symphonic consciousness analogy that we talk about in high level perception, it'd be something along the lines of like the individual's gateway into both feeling like they're a part of the symphony that's unfolding, of the unity, as well as the individual truly figuring out what their unique instrument and melody are in the symphony. And that's the gateway moment for them finding themselves. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's just that process of becoming great. Like that process of trying to find your greatness, or find your or whatever, your highest value, however you want to put it, but that thing that, like, you're kind of here to do, I suppose.
Exactly.
It's
your ikigai in the Japanese.
And again, like, this is all just, I don't know anything. Like, I always want to preface, like, I don't know nothing, like,
this is a very common archetype, though.
But these
this
are
is
just
a hard one to even say, I don't know anything.
Well, but it's important. It's like, these are just my ideas, right? Like, these are just thoughts. Like, I'm not trying to pretend like I'm, like, this could apply to anyone else. I'm strictly saying, like, this is what happened to me.
It applies. I personally think it applies to pretty much.
Well, I hope it does.
Everyone, because I made a hypothesis in chapter 2 on high level perception, which is that the North Star perception, what we're talking about, this ikigai, this true north, basically the idea is that it plays a fundamental role in the nature of reality. So the individual uncovering their own unique artistic expression may even be one of the most fundamental parts to the nature of consciousness and the nature of reality, the nature of creativity. And so it is almost certainly a fundamental role. So we unpacked True North. We played the first song of Hindsight, and we have another song that we want to play, music video.
And so the and you might have to reach back, because obviously we played that song at the beginning, but I think the purpose of us playing that particular song was is going to kind of help us get into the next topic of just how the album's going to play out, and then also kind of the future of music, or these ideas about how music technology is changing so much. So the first song was straight up recorded, like, in a living room, everyone's playing at the same time, no auto tune, no, like, we obviously mixed it to the best of our ability, but I think we had like 5 microphones, like, like SM58, just like just bare bones, like whatever we had, we just put it up, went for it, and that provided like a cool beginning for me to the album, because that was actually a song I recorded with Morning Old Sport, like, all that time ago, and it just never quite ended up making it on the album that we recorded in Colorado at that fancy studio. And I was like, you know what, this is perfect. Like, I should kind of start here, and I think it's a nice juxtaposition, because again, you're going to kind of hear what very little music technology sounds like, and then kind of the depth of the other direction you can go when you have all the tools that I have now.
May I also just make a, at the very beginning of Like It or Not, you have the definition of hindsight.
Right.
What's super interesting is that I have this quote in chapter 3 of High Level Perception, which is the edge, where I write, because it's like the edge of civilization's knowledge, and that when we're birthed, that we want to rocket out to the edge and artistically express ourselves, plant flags beyond the edge, test them with hypotheses, artistically push the edge. Okay. And so, Galileo, I had this quote in there too, that it's that all truths are easy to understand once they are discovered. The point is to discover them. Yeah. And so hindsight is very deeply related to that.
That's interesting.
People look and they're like, hindsight's always 20/20. I look back and Steve Jobs also has a really profound quote where he says that when he looks back on his life, all of the connecting dots make sense.
Yeah.
And it's hard when you're in the middle of the journey to be able to see that. But I would challenge you to try and, as much as you can, both live in the moment and also live as much as you can in the entirety of your trajectory past to future, so that you can kind of see the dots in the past and the dots in your future trajectory toward your North Star, and kind of have that really help you.
Yeah, that's a pretty high demand, but I'll do I'll do my best.
To the audience
no,
as
no,
well,
no,
to
yeah,
everyone,
no,
yeah,
I think
yeah.
no, and I think that's fair, and I don't mean to like make light of it, because no, I think it is. I think the one thing I'll relate on with that is this thing I always think about Einstein. I was thinking about him, like, and this is something again I came up with in college when, you know, we're all like philosophizing and talking about how, like, you know, there's colors going on right now that we can't see with our eyes, and like stuff's so crazy, you know, and staying up and watching the sunrise. But one of my favorite thoughts from some of those like conversations was just this idea of like Einstein wasn't a genius because he had all these crazy thoughts. What made him a genius was him actually being able to grab it and like explain it to the rest of us.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of,
Yes.
so I think I think
Amen to that.
well, and in that way,
Amen.
well, and it's funny, and like, and in that way, all my songs are in hindsight, right? Because me getting them is like the present, and then the hindsight part is me
Yes.
like unload, you know, like me mixing a song is me like unloading. What does this mean, right?
Yes.
Is me like, you know, looking at it in past tense. Like
Yep.
that's what mixing is like putting all this past tense, like
Yeah.
unpacking into a song, and by the time it's finished, it's like it's a whole other thing, you know.
Yeah.
It's like it's not even it's totally in the past by the time it's finished. And I think a lot of people look at that different. They're like, oh, this brand new song just happened, and it's like, no, it didn't.
Yeah,
No, it didn't. That thing's like probably 2 years old.
The
you know,
best
like-
meme to communicate what you're talking about is the guy that is he's walking up stairs to get to the top of the stage where there's this massive audience watching him, and he's a plate juggler, and what nobody sees is all of the broken plates on the staircase leading up. So whenever people deploy something like what you're describing, I do my best to always look at the creative process for that deployment, because when I listen in the example of like Zeb's music, when I'm listening to it, I basically begin kind of trying to unpack what, like as an example, like what the Ableton layers look like. And so for me, that's sort of my way of trying to go into the artist's perspective of how they piece this masterpiece together. And then, so let's maybe,
let's just check it. So just, I guess to the listeners, it's just pay, you know, and it's probably hard through YouTube, and, you know, it's probably not going to be as fidelity as it's meant to be. But the idea here is that this is kind of a more modern sound that I'm exploring with, and that I'm pushing towards.
Okay, so we're going to listen to and watch Hate to Say Tease.
Yeah, and this will be nice just to do the preview instead of the whole song.
We're just standing in the night. We're just standing here.
Man, I love that.
Oh, cool, man. I'm glad. Yeah,
Wow.
and you can kind of, you know, and it's funny, like you can kind of hopefully feel, you know, and it's basically me as the character. Like we don't have everything in common, but he definitely has a heavy peppering of failure throughout, like all the things that happen in this story. That's like that I'm gonna drop like this full length video of, but yeah, that's my best shot at kind of describing some of the stuff I went through, because it was tough. Like I didn't know how to deal. I didn't have any tools.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to deal.
Yeah.
So like I had to figure out kind of all on my own, you know, and But anyway, so I really like that song in particular, and I hope it shows like kind of that example, right? It's like these impossible strings. Like those aren't even possible, you know. Like it's like there's some sampled stuff, there's stuff I layered on top of it, and that's the other piece that's crazy is like I'm using these sample libraries that are recorded with the best mics in $1 million rooms with the best players on the planet.
Wow.
And so like all of a sudden you have access to this like you know, this whole other universe.
How do you get access to that universe?
It's just you just end up spending a lot of money on software. Like,
and
so,
what is the like for people that may
totally. So Contact has been like the standard for a long time. That's a Native Instruments like platform actually. Contact, yeah. And so there's a bunch of libraries that people make for that platform.
And you pay like a subscription.
Some of them are so on that one actually. That one's East West, and that's very much like an Adobe like subscription based kind of thing. So you pay every month, and you have access to this huge library of like you know, again, just impossible strings that you can't, you know, like to pay to like have an orchestra show up and do what you're getting. It's, you know, you're talking like $10,000 an hour, you know, minimum. So, it just, and it really just pulls the lid off of like what you're able to do. And, you know, as someone that grew up like broke, you know, like it's really nice all of a sudden to be like, wait a second, these tools aren't that expensive. Like this is affordable now. And and I'm not being limited by that. That feels really nice too. Like,
exactly.
And I
the
got
democratization is super important.
And I have to say, like, there's been so much like negative vibes off of people about using the computer or using these kind of softwares and stuff. And like, I just want to take a moment to like thank you, everyone that like makes this software and does all this, because it makes all of this possible.
Amen.
And it makes like it's a huge gift, and it's changed my life. Like these people have changed my life like in a fundamental way.
Yes.
Where I can wake up every morning and do whatever I want.
Yes.
And like just that freedom is like thank you. You know, like I can't believe it.
You're speaking the same language that we speak here with exactly like oh my gosh, look at all of the cameras, look at all of the audio equipment, look at all of the TriCaster, look at all of the mixer. Look at our inheritance that we need to be grateful for.
Totally. Well, and okay, you know, and obviously like there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and we're in a tough time. But I think people forget to like remember that like we're in an artistic renaissance for sure. That like they're going to look back on this period of time where it was like, wait a second, all of a sudden these laptops got powerful enough, and it's still just kind of happening. Like this is like maybe, you know, maybe 2010 I think was like the first time I was like, wait a second, this computer is getting strong enough where I can kind of do this.
Yes.
And I couldn't afford what was like available at that time, but like now, you know, now I have this, you know, I have the desktop Mac, and it's like endless. And again, and the softwares just kept getting better and better. Like some of the software I'm going to show you, like, you know, this update for this EQ, I think it's pretty recent. I think it was like within the last year. It's changed everything. Like it changes how I approach everything, and it's just one plugin. You know, and because I mean it's such a fundamental thing. EQing is like really fun, but just the way it works and some of its
equalizer.
Equalization.
Equalization. And are you going to kind of also break that down a little bit when you show us kind of?
I think that's the main thing I'll probably go over is just like I'll be like, here's what this EQ looks like, and you know, like how we're approaching fidelity. Right, we're trying to sculpt out everything you don't use, so that everything you want to, like all the information you want present is as clear and as loud as you can possibly make it. Because, you know.
We could, in a sense, like use EQ to do something like take the ambient noise of the fireplace and turn that down.
100%.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. I could like we could like pretty much get that to be non-existent.
That's so interesting that we can do that.
Yeah, well, and there's programs like, there's this program called RX. I think we're on like, I don't know which version. I think I have RX6, but you can literally sample something like that noise, and it will erase it out of audio.
Just sample it, and it'll just erase it?
Yeah, so you sample it without somebody talking over it, and then you talk over it, and it actually does like, it's kind of magic. It's like
magic,
Yeah, it's like kind of a little bit of black magic. They do it really well, too.
It's basically take this exact audio waveform and remove it from the next audio
and then
files.
It's just, boop, it's gone, and then all of a sudden it sounds like you were in like a perfect booth.
Okay, so let's see here. So we covered the democratization and of the technology enabling creative explosion. I would also make a small asterisk in that your our classic people that kind of are posting on maybe like Twitter. I think that style of like 140 characters or 280 characters, thinking that that's something that people will scrape into, I think is a little bit, people still will and treat that kind of like artistically, but I think more so people will care about like what Zeb mentioned with the like contact library exploding, and then that enabling and the computational capacity enabling people to put together music. Or with this style of technology, it's all of the videos and all of these video conversations and taking the samples out of there. So I guess I would just challenge, in a sense, people to try and get a little bit off of Instagram and Twitter and trying to make a cool artistic push on that. It's okay, you can do that, but I'm just saying that I think the next level is to try and take something like maybe like something that you pour a lot of effort into on something like music production or on video production, and try and make something that is a really good sort of compression and distillation of profound wisdom potentially that you've learned. I mean, it is an art in a sense to try and boil it down to a couple characters, but anyway, I want to talk a bit, like you were kind of initially getting us a little bit initialized into the process of talking about EQ and talking about these other aspects. So just quickly, Hindsight was, we had 2 samples, right? And so far, and that those are samples of what the full songs.
Right. So those are like the promotion material I built for, like, okay, the song's out at midnight, check it out, kind of thing.
Yes.
And I've done one of those little teasers for each single that's come out so far. So,
Yes.
yeah. So it's just like a very small snippet of the song.
And then Hindsight is approximately 20 tracks.
So this was kind of cool. I basically gave myself a deadline of whatever happens this year. That's the album. Like Hindsight, like it has, like, one, I need a deadline regardless, but
shot clocks are very important.
Yeah. To time box something is like the only way I'm able to get stuff done. And it's so funny. I've been resisting that forever. Like my sister's been telling me for years, she's like, just time box it. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Like I'm too creative, or, like I just couldn't quite just be like, no. It's, it's this, it's like just hard deadline. But what really helped me with that too is like the motivation of, like, and I know it's kind of stupid, but like the idea of Hindsight, like it has to come out in 2020. Like just like that's the year it has to come out.
It has to,
because Hindsight is, like I know it's a little dumb, but yeah, like it has to.
Perfect.
So, and then to further that kind of like dumb cuteness kind of like thing, if I got 20 songs, like that's just another like
boom.
That's kind of fitting.
Another
but
one.
Will I get that? I don't know. I still don't know for sure. Yeah, because it's not like I can't sit back and be like, oh yeah, the album's done. I'm still like, right, and it's really interesting too because, with Grandma's funeral, for instance, that I was speaking about, and there's some other things that are pulling me back to Colorado this year. I probably spent 6 weeks in Colorado, so I was behind schedule, and then now all of a sudden it's like, what do I have, a month and a half left?
Exactly.
So so we'll see, and if I can do it, great.
Yeah.
But it's going to happen exactly the way it's supposed to.
Yep.
And bare minimum, like, count on at least 14 songs, like, easily. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
But,
So that's, we have Hindsight, and we'll have that probably the first week of 2021.
No. The album will be, like, it has to come out, like,
December 31.
There's no way it's later than midnight.
Yeah. Okay.
Of New Year's. Yeah.
So December 31, you guys got that. And then we have the work so far. We have this kind of working nostalgia is kind of like your next, like, 2021.
Yeah.
And then we have the potentially Next Coast, which is later. So you're already also slowly, and these kind of have different essences to them. You were telling me that True North has more of a pointed and defining style, more of like your anchor creatively, and then Hindsight is more moody, and then Nostalgia will have its own essence. and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I can speak on that a little bit. So I'd say, again, yeah, True North was like, okay, just remember how you got these songs, right? Like this is your flag on the moon. Like just if you get lost, come back here. And so that was me really like cutting my teeth, like developing, okay, this is kind of how the workflow is going to be. The sound of it is actually like pretty 80s almost. Like it has this like really throwback 80s kind of vibe, which is going to come back. Like there'll be other songs that sound like that, but that's probably the most of that sound you're going to get in one album is that album, which is the EP. It's not the first, like, so why I say my first album's Hindsight is because it's the first full length. I would consider True North more like an EP. And again, it is. It's like it was more of a testing ground. Okay, this is my entry point. This is how my process works. This is my workflow. Let's experiment with like how it works, solidify it. Great. And then I think Hindsight is just a continuation of like, okay, I really want to explore this even more and like push myself a little further. So it was even probably more complex than True North, which True North was already like way overdone probably. So Hindsight's like really very complicated, like lots and lots of stuff, like crazy chords, really fancy lyrics, like a lot of time on that. But the biggest thing is just like the instrumentation and the sound design and just, like you were saying, the layers. Like each song's like 200 tracks probably. Like it's insane. Yeah. Other than like maybe the intro that's the jazz song, or here and there you'll get some like low fidelity like clips and like little intros and outros and stuff. But the bulk of it is super complicated, which is great. And I think I've finally exhausted like kind of where I want to reach, like all the different things I wanted to explore a little bit. And I think with Nostalgia, I'm very excited to like kind of sit back, like maybe retreat a little bit back into this like core place of like, I know this works and get a lot of work done in that space where
I like that.
Well, and I think it'll be nice too, because I think the goal for 2021 is speed. Like and that's why I'm really hoping to get 2 full length albums done that year and have one be Nostalgia, which again would be like the ultimate makeout album, kind of the slow stuff. And then Next Coast, which is just like, get your fucking dancing shoes on, like we're going.
Get your dancing shoes
we're
on.
gonna go.
The ultimate makeout album, and get your dancing shoes on.
Right.
It's kind of interesting. You and I are finding ourselves in a similar rhythm where I kind of had in 2018 and 2019 about 700 interviews, an interview a day, and then I took 2020 to synthesize and distill high-level perception, and now with the move to LA, it's right back into an interview a day type fire.
Jeez,
and so it's kind of interesting that like you also had this kind of anchor point, like mine was high-level perception, yours is True North, and now you have your you figured out a bunch of kind of your core music production essence, kind of like I figured out a bunch of my core cognitive frameworks, and now it's just like create from that place. I love that.
No, it's really exciting and it's super liberating, and I'm sure there's going to be a time where I'm like, okay, now I want to break all this apart and kind of start over, but I'm excited for at least the next few years to just kind of reap the benefit of like all of this work I've done, all this like groundwork I've done, and just see how many songs I can get done and like how good I can make them. So yeah, it's and it feels really nice too to like feel like the bulk of the work is over, and now I'm just God, it's so
good,
weight off my shoulders,
so
like,
good,
so crazy.
Well, you need that
so
shot
different.
clock, like you were talking about that time boxing. You said your sister was trying to.
So they're all software people. So like,
they're
they're all minimal viable product. Like, get the song front to back first.
Boom.
And I've adopted that. Like, so I write. So sometimes I will write an entire song without even touching an instrument. It's all the lyrics, the melody. Like, it makes sense front to back. I could play it for someone. They're like, oh, that's a song.
Yep.
Right. And maybe I'll do the instruments even just with my voice, just to get it done. Like, just minimal viable product, and then go from there. And that was huge. And then, time boxing is huge.
Exactly.
Huge.
It's super interesting. You make the analogy to tech and software engineering.
Well, it's so hand in hand now.
It is.
Well, and that's the other thing. Like, there's no rock stars anymore, I think, that are like, I mean, I'm sure there still are, but like the people that I respect the most, we're actually like more like computer nerds than we are like Motley Crue. Like, it's not that it's not that crazy lifestyle anymore. Now it's like, okay, well, maybe if I eat more potassium and get to bed better on time, then I'll really be able to maximize my
Super
like
nerd.
Oh, it's insane.
I love it.
And I get it. Well, and this is another thing I had to adopt. Like, I still have to get loose. Like, when I'm writing the songs, a lot of times I still have to really get loose. But then when it comes to like finishing and polishing it to the level I want to and doing the technical stuff, I really do switch. Like, it's putting a whole different hat on. Totally. So
it's kind of the hyper creative, strategic, and then the other one is kind of like hyper operational and
Yeah.
executional.
Yeah, because it's work.
I
It's
feel
and
like,
that's the
yeah,
thing. It's
yeah.
not it's not all like glamorous. It's like
Yeah.
it's computer nerd work.
It's
You're just
computer
like,
nerd work.
yeah.
I like that. And the time boxing, MVP, and shot clock in like basketball or like red zone and football analogies.
Wasn't that a good
are-
feeling when you sink a 3-pointer and just
God,
comes off the fingertips? and
like
just-
3, 2,
ooh,
1.
ooh, I
Yeah.
love that. I love that.
There's exactly. It's got to happen, and you got to remember that you're going to take the 10,000 shots, and
Right,
you know,
right.
yeah. So you're
Yeah.
going to miss some, and you know Wayne Gretzky also
Yeah.
talks about that. Best hockey players that's ever lived, and like. You're going to miss 100% of shots you don't take, so
Yeah.
you have to take the 10,000,
Yeah.
and that you're going to miss a lot of those.
Yeah. Well, and I think
yeah.
that's why like working really hard and quickly is so effective. It's because like it gets you through all that. You just slog through all that. So it's all this
Yeah.
trial and error. You know, it's like again trying to find that entry point.
Yes.
And you're like you're like in a maze bumping around the walls blindfolded, like, and you just
Yeah.
if you just run really fast and not be afraid of hitting the walls and like falling over and getting back up, but if you go hard and fast, like you're gonna get through the maze quicker than
It's
someone
funny.
just like
You're describing also what the reinforcement learning agents do in their simulated environments, which is super interesting. 'Cause
Wait, what is this?
They also like reinforcement learning agents when they enter into their simulated environments. What they do is they kind of go through this process of basically like trying to understand what the world that they immerse themselves into, and like
Okay.
what the reward function is, and how they can kind of do different items in the space. So like if you're trying to like do something like a game of sumo or whatever, like they will like slowly over time the agents will figure out that they can like kind of like push each other out of the ring,
okay,
and then earn the points.
okay.
And then but they flail around a lot.
Well,
to
here,
try
just take
and
me one
learn.
step back though. So,
Yeah.
who are these agents?
It would be like
What did you call them again?
reinforcement learning.
Reinforcement
reinforcement
learning
learning.
agents.
Yeah, so reinforcement
Okay.
learning is arguably the most profound branch of artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, one of them. I mean,
Okay.
self-play is probably the most profound branch, but yeah. So like the idea is like you're describing when you blindfold and then you courageously bump into the walls in the maze, and if you fall over you get back up. The reinforcement learning agents in these simulated environments, they do that style process where they
Right.
like fall, like it's all trial and error, it's
Sure.
all learning to become peak performance. And so the more that you kind of realize that is what these individual conscious agents are,
Yeah.
is that process, the more kind of fearless and courageous you are to pursue that North Star and those goals.
When I think, and that's the thing that's interesting too, is I think people. Sorry, just really quick, because I just want to.
Yeah.
I want to say this to 8-year-old me or whatever, and I want to say it to anyone that's trying to do music or anything creative. I think sometimes people get confused by watching someone that's already there, being like, "Look, well, they're not working that hard," and it's like, dude, but they found that that's because they've already front loaded all the work. So they like watch this
Yeah.
person and they're like, "Oh, well, I just want to be like that, where it's like super easy, and I just show up and I sing and I do the fun part, and I never have to do any of the hard
I'll
part."
give the most common example used
Okay.
today,
Yeah.
which is people look at Joe Rogan and they're like, how, like 10 million subs, and he just walks in and has a conversation, but they don't go and look at the 11 years
Right.
of 1,500 plus
Right.
podcast conversations where in like the first 100 it's them screwing around with the streaming technology to try and make it actually happen. So that's kind of like or it's the plate juggler, the steps of the plate juggler
sure.
before they get on stage. So you have to, and like you described with your foundation that you set up, that's now enabling you to produce the 2 albums in
Right.
2021. Yeah,
Hopefully.
so-
Well, and again, that's
yeah.
the goal. But so back to my 8-year-old self, just like, look, buddy, like I was never afraid of the hard work, and I did do the hard work, but don't doubt that that's the right thing, because sometimes I would see these people seemingly doing it effortlessly, and I'd be like, I must be doing something wrong. And no, and I promise you, you're not. You just have to get through all the trial and error
Yeah.
until you find the way that you can do it effortlessly.
Yeah, yeah.
But so much of that is just go
Yeah,
as
it's-
hard as you can
yes.
until you crack the code and you can literally deliver something
Yes.
easily. That's the whole goal, is to get to
Yes,
where it is
yes.
easy. But getting there, you're not. The only way to get there is by to do all the hard stuff. I feel.
And you have to be in love
Or at
with
least
the
for me it
journey
was.
of doing the hard stuff. And
Yeah.
I would just also balance the mentality of what sort of the Gary Vaynerchuk mentality of you gotta go through the hard work of 10 years of eating shit in a sense and trying to put everything together.
Yeah.
And with the kind of Peter Thiel mentality of why can't you do what you're going to do in the next 10 years? Why can't you achieve that in 6 months? And so I would synthesize those two perspectives. And so try your best to, like, for example, I'm just going to give you the example with me. I could have, instead of doing a show a day, 700 shows in 2 years in 2018, 2019, I could have done a show a week. And I could have only done 100 shows in those 2 years, but I would have went through a lot less trial and error, a lot less combinations of this type of stuff.
Yeah.
So I would say that you can sort of quote shortcut and quote accelerate yourself in your goals by realizing that there are strategic ways to move yourself towards your goals faster at the same time as you do in fact have to just eat a lot of poop along the way.
Yeah, dude, huge shit sandwich. Like you just got, but like that's the thing. It's and again, like just I don't want to get the biggest thing I'd want to say is I think a lot of people do feel like they're working really hard. Just don't doubt, because it's hard enough to fall on your ass all the time and to do the trial and error. So in that period of time, just try not to question, am I doing the right thing? Just know that you are, trust the process, and let yourself get beat up and like be courageous with it. And like, don't take a lot of time to beat yourself. Like beating yourself up was probably the biggest time sink of my life, for sure. And it was really hard for me because again, I struggled with depression, and like my past definitely exacerbated all that. My, my experience with school and my learning disabilities and some of the teachers I had to deal with in high school, like exacerbated all that. Man, I got some stories, dude. Like, don't even get to start. My band director in high school, unbelievable. Like, it was atrocious. Like, I was like, man, I would be so embarrassed if I was you. Like, why would you treat kids like that? It's just bananas. But anyway, so.
Yeah, and the idea that one can kind of not dwell so much in those traumas, but rather like integrate them really well, integrate your shadow really well, and use that as the fire.
Totally. Well, and talk about easier said than done. Like,
I know,
like, and I struggle with it so much because, you know, like, okay, I'll give one example. So there was a high school recital, the senior recital in high school for band, right? So jazz band and the marching band and all that stuff. So, and each senior that night had a solo except for me.
Wow.
And I have no idea.
Oh, interesting.
It was a total surprise. And it was so effed up. Like literally, I'm sitting there and he starts to introduce all the seniors and he's like, this senior's going to give their solo. And all of this was planned and had been going on for months. And
nobody talked to you about it.
Well, I just had no idea. Like I had no idea to talk. Like I think all the students just assumed
that everybody had one.
So they had no reason to be like, yo, Zeb, like,
do you have
I
one?
think, I think homeboy's like pulling a fast one on you. So I had no warning. And then the concert's over and I'm just like, wow, and it's crazy too, because I raised like $15,000 in grant money and put a recording studio in his facility.
Wow.
Yeah, and he kept being like, you got to teach me how to use this stuff. And I was like, anytime, man, just like call me. I gave him my number. I was like, let's set up a time. Like, I'd love to. Never followed through. Just, I don't know. He just hated me. Like, it was just he just like, I don't know. It was the most bizarre thing, but I'll never forget that night. I stand up out of the chair after like, playing as well as I could, like, practicing a lot. Like, it was this huge concert, whatever. And being the only senior that wasn't mentioned, didn't get a solo. And I was the kid going to Berkeley. That was the other part. I was like, what is this? Like, okay, like whatever. So anyway, getting over that, like, see, you can tell I'm still not over it. But that's the piece. It's like, sometimes these things happen and it's like, but you just gotta, whatever. Like, you just gotta know that, like, those people, who knows what that thing is, but you can't use those things you can't let those people have any kind of power. Because that's the other part. Until you, like, forgive that situation, it's still me giving him power to, like, further that abuse or whatever that thing he was doing to me was. Anyway, so side tangent, but
wow.
Don't doubt yourself. Yeah. Don't let people crush your dreams. Like, don't take that stuff personally. It has nothing to do with you. Yeah. 8-year-old self.
Thanks for sharing that story. We all have so many like that.
Sure. Yeah,
it's important to hear people talking about that courageously and how they've moved on and integrated it, become stronger, wiser.
Sure.
Do do we want to hit? It seems like maybe we should do music breakdown and then future music stuff, right? Because the future music stuff's a little bit more like in the next, like the 10 years, like autonomous car, those type of stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, either way, I mean, because I think one addresses the other. I think, actually, you know what? I wouldn't mind talking about, like, why. Yeah, actually, talking about the future of music, I think will give the listeners maybe a chance to be like, why do I want to look at EQ, right? So maybe, you know what I mean? Like, it'll be, look, you know what I mean? Like, it'll kind of be like, this is why I'm even showing you this, is because
Let's do that.
Yeah.
So what I want to, I guess, how I would want to maybe start this future of music section out with is something along the lines of, a couple days ago, Zeb is telling me on the phone, a lot of people that are very familiar with the exponential technology curve and just the proliferation of autonomous vehicles, people are becoming more aware of this thanks to people like Andrew Yang, who are trying to get more people awake to the fact that all of the jobs in the taxi cab driving space, as well as the truck driving space, are millions in the U.S. and tens of millions globally are being automated, and we'll see that more and more, by 2030 and whatnot. And so, what Zeb is interestingly coming at the angle with is he's saying that, telling me on the phone, so fascinating, that what's going to happen is that people are going to care less and less about things like the most massive engine inside of the car, and they're going to care more about the comfortability of the seats. They're going to care more about the quality of the speaker system. Can you put an ambisonic system inside of a car? They're going to care about the quality of the screens and things like that. And that he goes a step further, and he's like, you're in the autonomous car. Like, most people spend, like, if we think about it as a planet, if there's 8 billion people, and if maybe, I don't know, a couple billion of them drive every day, a couple billion, let's say, drive every day, how many hours are people spending on being stressed,
just white knuckling it,
white knuckling,
just hating, just
cars,
and the rage and the frustration, and this is my life just passing me by, and I'm stuck in this, and
transitioning that hour commute or whatever,
it's going to be straight up global relief
to a massive planetary focus on decreasing stress, lower cortisol levels. Like in chapter 6 in the AI coach section, we talk a lot about the visualization of data. Right, above all else, show the data, Edward Tufte. And so if you could see the planetary cortisol levels literally drop once you have the autonomous vehicles. So Zeb's probably going to end up being one of, I think, the pioneers in the space of enabling people in the immersive experiences where they don't have to, where for the hour or however long they're in the vehicle, that they can focus on this deeply, profoundly enriching musical experience, immersive experience. And so I think also what you'll see when Zeb, as he was alluding to earlier, what you'll see when he does the demo is you'll see this, all of the layers, all of the tracks, you can hear them best when you're in the sort of more ambisonic style setting with higher quality speakers that are around you, Dolby surround sound style, rather than when you're maybe when you're wearing your little.
Well, and it's not even. I'll jump in.
Beautiful.
So So it's not even like hear it best. It's so many of the devices that we use to deliver music, they're not providing half of the information that so many of us are painstakingly put together. And so unless you have a really decent pair of headphones, and then again with this car, autonomous car situation where you're actually going to be.
Quick question: Is that actually the percent? Is we hypothesize that it's not even delivering 50% of the data?
That might be an exaggeration.
Okay.
I mean, it's hard to say. There's a bunch of different limitations, right? Like, so it's like we were talking about. Like, air is not necessarily the best conductor of sound to begin with. Our ears are super limited, right? So there's limitations on a few different fronts. But yeah, I would say until you're in a situation where your speakers or headphones are giving you a full spectrum, range of what your ears can hear, low and high, because our ears can only hear so low and so high. But once you have a delivery system that's at least giving you that, you're missing a lot of information. And then two, I think a really, like a almost way more substantial part of it is your attention span, right? Like, so if you're not paying attention, it doesn't matter anyway. So I think that's another part of what's so exciting about like the autonomous car piece. At least from an entertainment standpoint, like you were bringing up earlier, with the loss of jobs that's going to happen and like how it could impact the economy and, cause those problems. I can't speak on that at all. And like, I don't know how that's going to play out. And I hope it's not this disastrous thing or whatever, but how it will affect someone's experience with music, I think does have potential to be one of the upsides, right? So I think this thing's coming either way. I'm not like, I don't want to say like I'm a big proponent of all these people losing their job. I want to make that clear. But I think that it's kind of, there's going to be, like with anything else, there's going to be positive effects and negative effects. And maybe one of the silver linings, let's say, would be this, you're now a captive audience. Now you're bored. Now instead of being stressed out, you're about to fall asleep. Like, and I could imagine a lot of people just, that's their extra hour they get to sleep on their commute to work. They're just passed out the whole time. But if you are awake, you'll be literally in a situation where you have nothing else to do but to like really actually let yourself hear the music. So
there's a couple of things. There's really hear the music, really immerse yourself in the podcast, maybe really get into the workflow stuff.
Or sure, anything you want to do. But I think that's the part that's exciting me. Or again, hopefully, it could be a silver lining for some of the negative impacts that it is probably going to cause. But yeah, I like the idea too that like someone could just be meditating the whole time to work and like just really, focusing on their mental health or whatever. Cause I think that's one of the things that's really holding us back is mental health. Like we're still blowing each other up and doing war. Like we still engage in all these terrible institutions. And I think a lot of that is because of, people being in desperation and people having, being really twisted up inside about stuff. And again, there's tons of different reasons for that, but hopefully this for some people could, be something really beneficial. But the whole point, I think we even started that conversation on the phone, at least from my standpoint, was I was just trying to describe to you why that's kind of important, because I've always wanted to make something withstands the test of time, right? Like that was always really important. Like when I would listen to the Beatles, I was like, there's something about this je ne sais quoi. There's this uneffable thing that makes it still work now. Louis Armstrong, same thing. Like he codified jazz in this way that it's just like you can always go back and it just works. It's like it's still applicable. And I would love for my music to do that, not only with lyrics and all the traditional stuff like good chords, good arrangement, like all that, but now there's this whole other layer that's just as artistic, which is okay, so this reverb is going to kind of come in here and then go that way, and then you're really, it's like you're not only have you arranged the music, but then you're getting all these weird sounds to like be able to spin around and do backflips and like hear things behind your head. Like I've literally and again, I'm not even like there's people that, especially sound design wise, that just are slay. Like one of my really good friends, Anthony Baldino, for instance, he can make something sound like it's happening behind your head in just in stereo, like not because you're in surround sound.
Wow.
He does. Yeah, like super super high technical, like just he in all the tools he's I mean, talk about putting in time, like
just
that kid.
In stereo.
Well, yeah, just with two speakers, being able to make something literally feel like it's, you're like, what the.
So it'd be cool, Anthony. It'd be cool to
Anthony
have
Baldino.
It'd be cool to also bring on.
Hey, if you can get him, man.
Yeah,
like
if you can connect.
If you can afford it, if you can. No, I mean, he's just so busy. Like getting his time is like.
Come and teach the wisdoms that you know.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be
interesting.
It would no. If you could get him, he's fascinating. Like he's a really cool guy. Again, his knowledge base is nuts. But anyway, so there's certainly people that's all they do, right? Is they spend all their time on the sound design part. And they definitely will wipe up my thing, but I think my strength is that I can make this song that's catchy, and I can do the chords right, and I can play the instruments, and I'm starting to like really push my edge with where the production stuff's going to happen and how I can kind of compete with those guys, because I think as people are paying more and more attention, they're going to be noticing it more and more. So in time, without that, you know, it has a higher probability that it's going to kind of go out of style, because it's like, it's not holding up anymore because all this music's so technically dope sound wise, you know, like you could have a very simple song that everyone can sing along to, but just the way it sounds is so next level that could, I mean, that's becoming its own like form of a hook. Yeah. You know, like having a really, you know, juicy, awesome chorus you can sing along to, that's a hook. But having it sound so crazy, that's really another way of just like grabbing someone and being like, listen to this. Yep. You know, and that's what we're realizing more and more is like this technology is opening this kind of other dimension of how to grab people's attention. Yes. So, yeah.
I love that. Woo! So pumped. Gosh.
No, it's exciting.
That visionary take on
Renaissance, man. We are in a Renaissance, I'm telling you, and it's still really young. Like some of this technology, like again, this EQ is like changing everything I do.
Let's do it. Okay,
let's check it out
cool.
really fast. And I know this is probably a little nerdy or whatever, and I'll try not to, like, I don't want this to turn into
nerdy on the program. We like doses of nerdy.
You came to the right place.
You came to the right
well, hold on,
place.
give me 1 second. Don't switch it over yet.
All right.
Give me a few. There we go. Let me just make sure.
Of course.
Because it kind of gets sleepy sometimes. Let's make sure it's not too sleepy. Okay, cool.
Okay,
I'm ready when you are,
all
sir.
right, so we're switching it over for you guys.
Cool. So, and again, not to have this turn into like an Ableton tutorial. There's plenty of those online.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Instead of our logo right now above your head, it's your the thumbnail.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's
I'm taking over.
He took over the show.
Okay, so really quickly, this isn't anything crazy. Like, this is a normal EQ. This is pretty standard. Most EQs have always been some version of this. Once the computer stuff started to happen, like once it's not knobs on a console, this isn't that crazy. It looks way better. It's way cooler to look at. But basically, what we're looking at,
it dynamically adjusts on digitally for you to see rather than the knobs.
Right, which is really, really powerful. Yeah. For instance, you know. For instance, I can grab one of these peaks. I'd be like, obviously that's feeling high, and I can duck. Oop, hold on. Oh, we're fine. Sorry.
I switched back over just in case.
Don't look at my private information. No, okay. So, sorry, back to it. So, here we are. We're taking that peak, and we're actually able to push down on it. So we're pushing against it.
Interesting.
And again, none of this is too crazy, but what has started to happen that's getting really nuts is we're able to, and this is going to be a little tricky to explain, but side chain these specific areas. So I could actually take this, right? I can make it dynamic, so it's going to push against just this area in the song. And let's say this is the entire track. This is everything but maybe the voice, right? So we're going to take, every time I'm singing and I start to get a little louder in my voice, this is going to push just this area of the track, of everything other than the voice, down. Mm-hmm. So instead of boosting my vocal up, I'm pushing everything else down.
I see. Okay.
And I'm doing that in a specific area.
Okay.
Instead of, because, you know, and side chaining's been around for a long time too, right?
This is called side chaining?
Side chaining, yeah. So it's a way of turning something else down so you don't have to turn up the vocal, basically. And that's usually that's a big way it gets used. Or like kick drums, you side chain kick drums a lot. So
is this when you kind of like are maybe watching a video and there's a transition that occurs where the kind of like the video's music track is playing and then the human's voice comes in and they bump down the music track a little bit so the human's voice can be
exactly heard? So you're ducking one volume for another, because this is the deal. It's like so like this cup of water, right?
Okay.
You can fill it all the way up, but that's it. Once you keep pouring water on, it's just going to overflow. And that's what distortion is. You can turn if you turn up everything super loud, it's just going to distort. So at some point you have a limit. You only have this amount of space to fill.
Now my question would be, what's the difference between, you know how when you use one of the functions on whether it's music production software or whether it's even on like video editing software, where you basically take the the tracks dBs and you drop them in that specific section.
Yes.
Where the human vocal comes up.
Right.
So what's the difference is that EQ? What is the difference between that and this?
Okay, so what you're speaking about is like basically doing it manually. Like you could go in and literally do that by hand.
Yes.
You can do it with a compressor. This is allowing you to do it in a very specific space because it's allowing an EQ. It's allowing an equalizer to duck. So I'm not ducking the whole track. I'm ducking one part of the frequency range, right? So I'm saying this. I want 400 hertz.
Mm-hmm.
I want that to go away when the voice comes in, right?
Interesting. So the rest of the music track plays at the same volume,
Right.
except at 400 hertz.
So now you're getting so surgical, just
yes.
crazy.
Okay.
And there's one other step on top of that I was just starting to mess with literally earlier this week. I was like, wait a second. Yeah. We're really going in. So I'm going to go one more layer. Okay, so we're cutting out, we're ducking something down in a very specific area to allow space for something else so we don't overflow our cup.
Yep.
Right. And the next layer on top of that, EQs, and again, this isn't new, but EQs have always had functions for mid and side. So mid information is everything that both speakers are doing.
Oh.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And then side information is if one, your right speaker's kind of doing a certain thing and your left speaker's doing a certain thing. And that's a really nice thing to play with, especially like with vocals, for instance. So you can get a little bit of, just widens it up because it sounds a little bit different on this speaker than this speaker. So it gives you this like stereo field. And a lot of times my vocals are layered. I'll have two of me singing or three. Well, a lot of times it's like 4 or 5 of me.
Like there's this song by Majid Jordan where it kind of goes like, ooh, ah. Ooh, ah,
okay.
Ooh, ah, and it kind of
that was amazing.
Yeah.
Your demonstration was super on point.
And that's like what people love is kind of like that
panning. Well, messing around with people's expectations, right? Something surprising. Again.
Okay. So you can
pay
really
attention
get
to
into
this.
the audio engineering on both the left and the right at specific frequencies.
Okay, so the way I would explain it is this.
Yes.
So let's say are we back?
Yeah.
So I took this thing, I want it to duck out just this frequency when the vocal's coming in, and then I only want that to happen to the side information.
Okay.
And then it's just bananas.
Okay.
And so I'm going to do, with my vocals, for instance, I would have, if this was a vocal side chain setup, I would have probably less of that's 58. That's probably fine. I might have something that looks like this. Like there would, in all of these would be dynamic, and they would all be specific to so the mids, I'd want more mid range. I'd want more center feeling information of my lower voice to come right in between your eyes, right? That provides a lot of presence. Something in the middle, like your kick drums, your voice. You kind of want it to you want to really feel it coming through the middle, and then you kind of are playing with people to get this bigger feeling, but you want the potency. Boom. Yes. So I'm going to punch you right down the middle with the lower part of my voice. Okay. And I'm going to make the track duck, right? So that can happen. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to knock out, so it'd be the opposite. Sorry. It's a little complicated, but I'm going to take the side information out of that area. So when my voice starts happening, it's getting rid of, I would keep that mid. My bad. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'd punch the mid out of the track, so more of the mid of the vocal comes through. So I'm going to diminish it here, and then let it come through for that portion. And then something like with these, with this area, probably somewhere in 1,000 maybe. This is kind of like that telephony sound of your voice, where it, the 1,000 hertz is kind of where it's like if you just had the 1,000 hertz area boosted a lot, it would sound like you were on an old crappy kind of telephone. Okay. It's like that pretty cutting part of the voice. I might drop some of that out of the stereo field. Yeah. And try to get that in the middle a little bit too. Okay. And then maybe I would push so I could get more of the high information way up here. I'd want more of that maybe in the stereo. So the little sprinkly high stuff, that's catching your ear over here. Yeah. And the more clear parts of the voice are going right down the middle, hitting you. And it's all playing against the music. It's warping, so everything's mushing together, mixing together. Yeah. Mixing. Wow. And it's really helping us maximize that full cup without having to spill over and distort.
Interesting. So
Right.
this is usually what audio engineers that focus on mixing are really specialists in EQ.
Oh yeah,
that
well, the whole
somewhat?
thing. So reverbs, EQ, any plugins, there's tons of techniques. But yeah, and that's the thing that's a little bit tricky. Is like, yeah, now we can do all this stuff, but we're still competing with guys that only mix and only mix their entire life that I will never be able to touch. Same thing I was saying about Anthony Baldino.
Yeah.
I will never be able to catch up with that guy in terms of.
Yeah.
I mean, I
His
wouldn't want to.
specific
Like,
thing,
man,
yeah.
it's so crazy.
So in a sense, you're doing more of a. You're doing like a vertical stack of artistic capacity, whereas someone else like maybe Anthony has kind of monopolized a horizontal space of being able to do that specific.
Well, him specifically, he does a lot of stuff
He does
as
a
well.
lot of
Oh no,
stuff,
he's
yeah.
a great composer. His music.
Some people do just
yeah,
the horizontal
right,
space.
yeah,
Okay.
totally. I mean, and
you
I think
want to go the full stack for your abilities.
right. So I
Yeah.
think my art, and again, my entry point into all of this demands that I can do all of this
Yeah,
myself.
for sure.
So right, so
Likewise,
my
yeah,
right,
likewise with-
right,
yeah.
So in other people, their entry point, they don't need all the other stuff. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I just want to mix, or even mastering engineers, or even that's even another crazy breed of people. Like, they take after the mix is done, they just take the stereo bounce. So you have all these tracks, you bounce it down to just a song file. What's on the right speaker, what's on the left speaker. That's it. They take that file, just that amount of information, and they do a whole other process on top of it to make it even sound better. And those people go nuts. So they're the ones that have, like, you know, they'll have these concrete pillars going 50 feet into the ground that is completely isolated from the rest of the facility, and those are their speaker stands. Like,
What?
yeah, nuts. Like multiple million dollar like spaces just to
Wow.
get every little last thing perfect. So
Yeah, I love going into this level of nerd because I think it gives a more nuanced engineering perspective, because it's usually when you just plug in the headphones and click play on your Spotify or YouTube song, usually you're not diving into. It's important to know these depths. Now, we actually wanted to play It's Yours. Do we want to show anything with the first minute of It's Yours, or just play it?
I mean, yeah. So basically, this could show you a little bit of, like, this is just a good example again of, and it's so yeah. I'll preface this song a little bit. So
Okay.
one, it was really cool. I was at my mother's house in Arizona. She'd recently moved to Arizona. I was out visiting her. I had this laptop. You know, it was like the day was over. I was messing around trying to get a song, and I didn't have a microphone with me, whatever. So I'm singing into this laptop, and it was really interesting because obviously terrible microphone, right? I'm capturing not of quality audio.
Yeah.
And so this whole intro was all recorded on a laptop microphone, and actually a through sound in the song is also that, but I've put it through a vocoder. I did all this stuff. So namely, even with really low fidelity recordings now, I took all of my tools and kind of challenged myself to be like, okay, how can I make this sound of fidelity, even though it was recorded on a frickin',
Of course,
you know,
yeah.
like, I don't know, 2011 laptop microphone, you know, that's probably been damaged, right? Like, it sounded like garbage. And
Interesting. So that was a challenge for you to do.
yeah,
so,
well, I really liked what happened, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to recreate this with my good microphone at home.
Yeah.
And besides, like, that moment's not now. Now is now.
Exactly,
I want to, like,
yeah.
what can I do? And and again, I was on that, like, minimal viable product. I was like, no, I want to get to the end of this song. I don't want to
Yes.
wait until I'm in front of my better equipment.
Yes.
So I showed up back at home with a finished song and going through the process. And this one was hard. I got to say, like, this one stumped me. I spent more time, and it's still not finished, to be honest, but this makes, it was like a task. But, you know, I learned a lot, and I'll be able to, like, take those skills with me. And it came out super creative, and it's something, you know, there's no other way I could have gotten to something that sounded like this.
Unless
So
you did it this way.
right.
That's
so
so
like,
cool.
yeah, so that was kind of a fun part of it too.
Excellent.
But yeah, this is an example of using all of those techniques and seriously going hard on the EQ to get something to sound right, or at least compelling.
it's small, but your love is bigger than it looks. And now my heart is full. And you burning hot, but you colder than these crooks who act like they care, but it's just the pain we share that I mistook. You
Boom. Wow.
Yeah, so that was super fun. And
So in that drop, you were mentioning, right, that there's a
ding, 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 ding. Yeah, so like that
Yeah.
kind of that I mean basically it's taken the space of like a synth lead line, right? It's actually my voice just through all these processes, and that was another cool thing too, is it forced me to learn a lot of plugins I hadn't used yet, because I don't have a lot of my high powered plugins on this laptop. I can't run them, so I downloaded all the Ableton, like the free Ableton plugins, like all the add-on kind of stuff, and they have a this kind of vocoder that does what it does. I mean, it's not it's not like a super heavy hitter like big plugin, but it does what it does in a really interesting way, and I just was utilizing that, and like I just started stacking up all these plugins that were really lightweight, and I had on the road with me, and then I came up with that. And then obviously when I got to the bigger rig, I was able to like massage it more with some better plugins, but again, I would have never I would have never come up with that melody too. That's the other thing that's really fun, is like I never would have played that. Like I never would have come up with that. That's in that, in that timing. Like it's like super kind of off time. It's like super weird, but then it's like
it's the wabi sabi.
It's that secret sauce.
It's
that spicy sauce.
Yeah, because if when you go too hard into the perfection territory, you actually. In a sense, you miss out on the creativity of the imperfection, which is super interesting.
Well, and I think that's been that's been like a very
poignant theme of artists' lives. Yeah.
Well, it's been a really interesting challenge or like thing for me to cope with, is like this getting super loose and creative and doing something like that, but then having to like again put on the whole other hat. And I think in the past, a lot of musicians just got to be like super crazy all the time, and then the engineers and the mixers like were the ones that were like, okay, well, the new nerd crew is going to show up. You guys come, like make this insane mess of creative fun stuff, and then we'll do all the hard work of like that. And I mean, of course, it'd be awesome if I like could just be like, oh yeah, here's 100,000, like I'm going to pay for the production of a Justin Bieber song, and just show up and sing. But I don't know. I kind of like the fact that was never an option for me, and now I have to do it this way.
What happened is now you have what I would say is like you have the vertical, as is said, like 10,000 hours of mastery.
Sure.
And because you now have that, this acts as your foundation, which then moving forward, it's like everything you touch in the future, every person that you work with in the future is going to know that you've been in their shoes doing that specific style. That's really important for the process.
Well, it would be fun, like if and when I get to that space, like I will at least know how to communicate really well and like collaborate with those people, hopefully. But I don't know if I'll ever need to. I mean, I think like somewhere like Skrillex has seemed to be able to just kind of leapfrog that whole process. Like he does everything himself, and he's probably like the Jimi Hendrix of the computer. I mean, at least that I know, like that we know of. Yeah, he's such a shredder, such a shredder. When you go back and listen to that stuff, it's just like, and there's so many people like that. But I think he really separated himself with just how good the actual music part was too, like how fun it was to listen to, how catchy it was, how like digestible it was. As like kind of pop music, really, like it kind of.
Would you say like Avicii's also?
Oh, absolutely.
He passed.
Absolutely, but I would.
Interesting.
Yeah, and he was pretty shreddy, but I think there was something about that like insane EDM, like all those crazy drops and all those crazy sounds, and just like the complexity there. And maybe I should, and I'm sure like I can imagine the comments people being like, well, you clearly haven't heard of this guy or whatever. So, and I'm not like an expert in that space of music anyway, but. Definitely got to give mad props to Skrillex. Yeah. Oh, and no shade on Justin Bieber, by the way. I know that kid works super hard, and like totally. I'm not saying like I'm not saying he just like shows up and like I know he has his all the stuff he has to deal with, and he can dance and he can do all totally. He has a whole other set of things.
It's always funny watching people, because I was also in the same shoes maybe like 5+ years ago, where I was kind of like very just like creating some sort of like a judgment about someone. And when you really have to take your time to deeply immerse yourself in their entire trajectory, like their whole roots, their essence and their fruits, in order for you to even grasp a tiny taste. And so it's very hubristic to try and make some sort of a claim about somebody's. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. Well, and I think like back to the entry point thing. It's like, what a bizarre thing to diss someone on. Like, oh, your entry point into like making you feel connected on this planet is dumb. You know, like, what is that? Like, Justin Bieber clearly found his entry point.
That's right.
And he's killing it. Like, like for sure. And mine just happens to be different. So when I brought up his name, it was literally just an example.
And it's more about inspiring people to find their entry points of uniqueness.
Of course.
Exactly.
Yeah. And do it however, do whatever works. I think, you know, like with singing, it's really interesting. It's like your best voice is most people describe your best voice as whatever comes most naturally to your body. Like most vocal coaches, that's what they're going to lead you down the path of, is again trial and error, figuring out what feels the best and like what's the easiest to not strain yourself. That generally is what sounds the best too. Yeah, like 9 times out of 10.
For me, it's something like this. And it's not that stressful.
Oh my God.
And it makes me feel so great.
You're making me fall in love. You're hilarious, bro. I love you. I do. You're so good. Like, you're so good on all these different levels. And it's so fun. And I love how excited you get. Like, it's so fun to just, like, be around you, because you're just like, yep, okay, and then we're going to do this, and we're doing the thing. Bop, bop, bop. Here we go. Moving. Like,
and now we're going to talk about consciousness. Yeah, it's funny. We can do it all. That's the thing. We can do it all. And there's never any, like, worry about, oh my gosh, how am I going to be perceived because I did this? Ooh,
yeah. No, one of you take yourself too seriously, and like you can't just have fun. Exactly. It's like, I just feel, I'm like, you poor thing. Like, that sucks. Like, that must be tough to be all like wound up that tight. Like, exactly. Again, not to diss their entry point. Maybe their entry point is to be like the most rigid person everywhere, but I don't know. I that's been far and few between, that like super rigid people that aren't happy. They don't feel like, I feel like maybe they're still getting there on the entry point part, but anyway.
Yeah.
It's kind of almost an indicator that they're not quite. Well, that's the only thing we get.
Entry
points. Oh no, 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
Like no, and again,
and the nutrients for the seed to get to the entry point, we need to help on that kind of sustainable development goal level for basic needs like water, no poverty, zero hunger things.
No, totally. Well, and again, the last thing I'll say on that is just some people that maybe deserve love the least need it the most. So like, be nice to people even if they're kind of mean to you. Like, give them an extra benefit of the doubt. Like, go that extra thing to be like, okay, they're being a dick, I'm gonna take a breath, and instead of lashing back out them, I'm just gonna be like, all right, man, like, my bad, and then see what happens. Like, see like what like 9 times out of 10 they're gonna be like, oh, my bad, like, no, that was just, and then that's like a good wholesome moment for both of you, and like, and it doesn't cost anything.
If I may even go as far as, on your complete pole of that would be, trying to channel Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, Lao Tzu consciousness, Confucius level consciousness, highest morality, highest ethics, highest spirituality, highest butterfly effect of the most possible benevolent beingness at every moment of your life on the highest pole. And if that kind of is part of the North Star, along with your unique artistic gift, game over. You are going to win at everything, period. So,
man, I just realized what I probably sounded like trying to describe the EQ. That was a mouthful, man. That was cool though. I can't wait to talk to you more. Like, we have so much to talk to you. Yeah. I know we got to
create on. We have
for sure. Oh yeah. Well, and again, like, I think I'm sure that people that you kind of like manifest in your life or like have around, I'm like totally curious to meet all of them, and I'm sure it's going to be worthwhile.
Yeah, there's again, like, it's so interesting because sometimes people like use the word like synchronicity, or they sometimes fall into nihilism where none of it is synchronous and none of it has meaning. But to me, even the word synchronicity itself, I think everything has a meaning and everything has a purpose, and it's all beautiful and it's all true. And in a sense, in this case where it's like, why is Zebulon Krol the second show in LA? Why is Zebulon Krol the first artist in LA? It's not, to me, it's not an accident. It's not nihilistic.
Well, I'm not doing it for second place, so I'm glad I'm the first.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And for me, it has a lot of deep meaning in the field of what what you're doing, what you're bringing to our world, and where your visionary mind is at with things and music production, and also with the synthesis of where we can create, because we talk about this a lot on the program, is like becoming mimetic gods, becoming the world's best animators, becoming the world's best anthology and documentary creators, where there's this everyone comes to simulation to be able to package the most complex thing, like CRISPR-Cas9. How can you package that into a 1-minute video and send that out to 1 billion people around the planet in a way that really excites them on an animation level? But the animation requires the music, and that's why there's so many things to collaborate on and create on. I mean, it's endless to what we're gonna be doing.
Oh yeah, no, we Renaissance time, baby.
Renaissance
like
time.
we're so lucky, and people are like, oh, this is such a. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of hard things, but like, I just try to focus on how exciting this shit is. Like, this is insane.
Yes.
Like, and I know for a fact, like, in 50 years, they're gonna look back on this time and be like, these kids were so lucky. Like, they had it. They were at the like the ground floor of like this insane.
There's one
change.
more layer on top of, I think, where we're going, which is that it's going to become more of the like kind of mixed reality creative. And when that happens, what's going to happen is the same way that we use the devices right now to manipulate the EQ and this Evernote file and the TriCaster and entering the videos, it's just going to be a little bit more kind of like in the mixed reality environment, just kind of like click, drag, drop, sort, add creative spin, add coloration, using voice, doing the location agnosticism with talking to other people on the creative project, delivering that to billions of people with the click of faster with higher bandwidths, neural links, all this type of stuff. So there's kind of the next layer, which you gave the computer information technology layer. The mixed reality Neuralink augmentation layer is like kind of next for creative.
And how crazy is that going to be? It's like, I feel like maybe by the time we kind of burn out all these new tools we've just gotten, and like they're still kind of in its awkward stage, and we're still like learning how to maximize them. But who knows by that time? Yeah, like we were saying on the phone too last night, if we really get to that, like they plug you in and you're like in the Matrix. There's no air. There's no limitation on your ears. Like, what the fuck is that music going to sound like? And who gets to make that music?
Complete body orgasm.
Like, who knows? Yeah, like, what is that? What is it? Who even knows how to, and what tools are you going to use to design that music? Like, man, who knows? But it is exciting, too. But I'm almost like, I kind of want that to, like, I want a lot of time with these new tools. Like, I kind of am like, I hope that doesn't happen too soon, because I don't want to have to relearn everything. And, like, okay, now we're done with speakers. Now it's all about, like, getting into this virtual reality and, like, building the music that exists in this space. Like, that'll be I don't know. I'm just, I already did enough work. I just hope this lasts for a little longer. Like, give me 10 years with this, and then we can do whatever you want.
Said the truck driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God. Oh, the poor truck drivers, dude. Oh, it's gonna be rough. So we'll figure it out.
Yeah,
we'll figure it out.
Being adaptive is one of the highest traits of biological success. So we need to adapt and
I don't want to
upskill and all these types of things.
And I'm not afraid of it. Like, if it did happen tomorrow, I'd be like, okay, let's put on the work gloves, whatever. But
yes,
we'll see what happens.
We're 2 hours in. We'll kind of move on these last couple subjects.
Okay.
So something that's really beautiful that you've embarked on, which I have also done many times and do at. I aim to do the 3-day fast monthly, and it's been a lot of fun.
Okay.
And I've done 1 5-day. I haven't done 10. You did 10 days of just water.
Yeah.
And I think it's very beautiful to be able to kind of drop into ketosis, burn fat as a source of energy, basically do some sort of like hardcore autophagy inside of your body, where all of these more pathological components intracellularly that are starting to be dysfunctional can be kind of eaten up and dissolved, and therefore
only the strong survive.
Only the strong survive.
Only the strong survive.
And you related that also to shadow, which is really interesting. So so walk us down the 10-day fast path.
Sure. Okay. Well, and it started with a few shorter ones. In college, I did like the cleanse where you were able to do like lemon juice, cayenne pepper, and what was it, syrup, maple syrup. So I'd also had experience there. I did that for 15 days, and we did a really slow like refeeding off of that. So pretty much 20 days without normal food intake. But that was different, and it was fine. But I think I'm a big proponent of the water fast just because it's crazy how it makes me feel. And I do think there's something. And again, to each his own. And I know there's a lot of controversy on this. Like, I've watched documentaries where people are like really upset about it. They're like, "This is so dangerous, and you're taking your life in your own hands," and all this stuff. And I think it always goes back, and anything in nutrition, it always goes back to like what works for you. And like, you kind of really have to, because I don't think there's a big enough test group on most studies to be like every human on the planet should eat this and do this. It's like, I don't know. But
microbiomes are very personalized.
And again, and I'm not an expert. This is just what works for me. Like, obviously, consult your doctor, whatever. But yeah, I did 2 3-day water fasts as kind of this ramp up. Then I did an 8-day, and then eventually the 10-day, and it was amazing. Like, it really felt like I was burning off like these old cells that like wanted sadness and wanted alcohol and wanted me to smoke cigarettes more and more. And like, like all this, like wanted me to stay in the trailer park basically.
Wow.
They're like these little teeny pieces of like, they're like little fiends, and they kind of, and I've heard people describe ourselves as like one of the smallest forms of our consciousness because they do have an impact on us and they do crave things. And killing all those guys off was like, it's a continuous process. It's not like it's some silver bullet and I'm done and I'm cured or anything. But I think for me personally, it was like super beneficial. I just shedded a lot of like weight and garbage and bad feelings and like I just shedded a bunch of crap. There's this talk in my family, and like we kind of talk about like there's this thing we're trying to move out of, especially with my cousin Tyler. We speak about this stuff a lot, and it's like we're trying to move out of this space and get to the better zone. And it's almost been described as like there's some kind of curse or this repeating, almost like the whole Bruce Lee dragon thing. Like your family's stuff kind of follows you. There's like this,
and science calls it epigenetics.
Okay, so there you go. So I think. Yeah, and so there's that, and just my own past, even just like just trying to burn off my own past, let alone like the curse of my family or something.
I love the way that you talk about literally the cells themselves having some sort of very like micro level consciousness where there's this proclivity for them to want like cigarettes or alcohol or cannabis
and depression and sadness,
depression, anxiety.
Yeah, because all those chemicals that come out of your brain like feed that desire of those cells, and like they definitely have addiction or like they have a need for whatever. So that's a whole other level of all that stuff, and it's tricky because it's just weird. I mean, we're walking around in these like animal meat sacks, like it's so like our existence is like so bizarre to me. I feel like it makes so much more sense if we were like this, I don't know, like energy creature or even a robot would make more sense to me, like this weird like. Yeah, it's interesting that our physicality is what it is, but
which is funny because a lot of spiritual people say that, well, I am just spirit, or I am just that energy, and that this physical meat vehicle is something that is, it's funny because I always say simultaneity. You have to be the biological meat suit, and you have to be the spirit and the essence of the soul.
Sure.
And if you kind of synthesize those two, that's really where you can kind of knock home runs out.
Well, and it's interesting too, like in a really concrete way, like if you gain control over your body, you see those people being able to have a lot more ease with succeeding in the other venues. Like like I've never seen like a super jacked guy that like can't achieve running down the block or like I don't know, like there's success in that space, or even maybe it's not even super jack, guys. I want to get this right. Like, if you can control, like let's use your example of like the kind of guru person. Okay, so maybe they're not like super fitness person, but it's like they gain control of their body, and that allows their full brain space to whatever else they're trying to delve into.
Yep.
And I think that's huge. I mean, even in simple stuff, like I make sure I'm really comfortable when I'm working. I make sure like just anything I can do to like hoard my brain space so I can put all of it into the music.
Right. That's right.
It adds up. Like it really adds up in a weird, I mean, and it's.
That's why the phone has to be powered off. It has to be put away. All that stuff.
There's all kinds of things. And people have all kinds, and like I love how sports, so many sports people have like all these little ceremonies and stuff that they do and like these superstitions and like whatever it takes, man. Like whatever it takes for you to protect your brain space and your focus. So when you're out there, your peak performance level, like do it. Like absolutely.
And fasting's totally in that sphere. So give it a go. Try and go against the cultural norm of eating 3 meals a day. Try and fast for a day if you've never tried it before. It's really awesome.
It's worth a shot. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Drop into burning fat. It might not work for you, so just give it a go. Exactly. We'll save a vast majority of this for when we sit down again on the program, because we talked about this with Evan for like 2 hours yesterday on the show, specifically about consciousness. So when we get you back on, especially as we do more like group dynamic settings on these discussions, in general, what would you say you think is the nature of consciousness?
So huge question. Basically what I've been doing now, and this will be like easy to do like as a shorter answer so we don't spend a bunch more time, but at the moment right now I'm using my consciousness, or like using that when I'm feeling like I'm being very conscious, right? Like when I'm like really engaged or whatever, and I'm kind of focused there, it's all about romance. So like I've boiled it down, and I've really been focusing on that, like probably for the last... Would you say
that that's analogous to flow, romance, and...
So the way I define romance for myself, at least at the moment, and like how I'm trying to like explore with it or kind of experiment with that idea, is it's all about an idea that I'm gonna remember this moment. So trying to make something, cultivate, an activity, or especially when I'm locked in and making music, that's obviously something I hope I'm gonna remember those moments. So like pushing myself to be conscious enough to the point where it's like really landing into my like hard drive and staying there. And I think it's kind of like I'm playing with it a lot, and I'm realizing it's like a feeling, but it's also like a task. It's like you have to kind of actively hold that. There's a lot of stuff to it, and the main times it happens to me is like when I'm singing is a really fun time, because I'm like way out in the space, like just trying to grab the perfect phrasing, and it's just enjoyable, and like I'm just hearing the music through my headphones, and I'm in this like quiet room, and it's just kind of, and I usually like sing in loops, so like I'll sing the same phrase over and over until it's just perfect, and then I'll save that, and then I'll do it again, layer it, and then move on, and like kind of do it in steps. And so it's like this really like slow, take it at your own pace, and just really like getting into it, and letting that perfect take like just come to me and not like fight for it or something. And then obviously romance and like with another person, like that stuff to me is like so, it's so huge. Like it's because I think we're all gonna die, right? Like the Grim Reaper's over here, but I think a lot of people forget he's also like running at you. Every time you're forgetting something, it's kind of like you're dying in this other direction. And so I've always been interested in trying to combat that and try to be like, no, wait a second. Like I want to live in a way where not only I'm getting these accomplishments done, but I'm remembering them, and I'm giving them enough meaning or an importance to me that I'm not just giving it away to the devil, or giving it away to the Grim Reaper, just whatever, it's not important. Like
so it's in a sense is cultivating such romance with your moment to moment existence,
right?
Which a lot of peak performance people call flow. Like you're immersed in that that romantic moment to moment beingness, artistic expression that you're doing. You're so in that flow state that then conscious experience, rather than becoming something that is like stressful or becoming something that you forget, is something that you basically everything is saved. as a really beautiful,
easier said than
done. But this
yeah.
is the essence of where you were kind of taking potentially some of the thoughts on the nature of consciousness.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So and instead of, and I guess the reason I gave you that answer is because that's what I'm doing with it now. And maybe, like you said, maybe next time we talk, we can go more into like the different things consciousness can be for me. But at the moment, I'm really trying to just have that be my number one.
Yes.
Kind of attention to it, or
imagine a world where everybody has a deep, profound sense of cultivated romance and flow with their artistic process.
Yeah,
that's
it'd
some stuff right there.
Well, and I think it'd be great for a lot of reasons. I mean, I think the more people take their time seriously, and the more they care about, the more you care about stuff, the more you feel like you have something to lose. The more you feel like you have something to lose, the less risky, dangerous, mean. The less you're just gonna flop around and be like, oh, well, screw that guy, boom, boom, boom. I'm gonna go to war. No. You're like, whoa. This is all really important. Like we gotta really cherish all this.
Yes.
Like that's such a. I think that's such gonna be. And again, easier said than done. And like, and I've had this conversation. And the last thing I'll say, I've had this conversation with a lot of people with like, do you ever think we're going to get to a world where there's like sans war, like where we can actually abandon that as an institution and stop blowing each other up? Yeah. So many people are like, no way. And I'm like, come on, man. Like,
you have
why?
to believe in world peace in order to get there.
Well, and I think why is it so crazy to believe? Like, we're still going to have problems. We're just going to have different problems that are like, way less exploding people probably, which will be really nice. Because like that shit's we got to cut that out. Like we got, we abolished slavery.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I know we still have all these problems.
Moved our ethics more and more towards maximizing well-being and flourishing.
Right. And it's going to take, and that's the other thing. They're like, well, I don't see it happening in our lifetime. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. But the idea that it could happen, like I think we got to push for it. Because maybe it's not going to happen. Maybe it's going to take 10,000 years for it to happen. But shouldn't that be like such a thing we get rid of? It doesn't work. It's a broken institution. Just get rid of it.
Indigenous people focus a lot in different cultures around the planet on something like a seventh generation principle.
Sure.
And so if you really do think on a world peace level, trying to get everybody to a state of where they're nourished, their roots are fully nourished with their basic needs so that they can actualize their states of cultivated romance and flow and fruits into the world, then we can more easily attain some sort of like a world peace on a seventh generational level. So it's really about the architectures that we implement in this 2020 2021 and beyond level that kind of ensure that the future trajectory is most benevolent and fruitful.
Well, and I think it's, and I think if it doesn't pass the love test, it's not going to be sustainable. Like if it's not coming from a place of love, and you're dust. And I think since we're wrapping up, I wanted to tell the story about. So we're going to end we're
going to outro with your song called Dreams.
Yeah.
And
that's coming out. That's gonna. So this is like what we're gonna say. What were we saying? This is the world premiere. Or
this is the world premiere.
It's coming out right now. No, but it's coming out. I'm gonna drop it on YouTube on Tuesday.
Sorry, I just gotta do that sound.
Pew 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 pew. Don DeMarco. Yeah. But comes out Tuesday, just on YouTube. There'll be another little teaser with it to promote it. And I don't know when. I think I might let this one ride and just drop it with the album. But a few people are on me. They're like, nah, man, like get this thing out on Spotify, get it out everywhere, like ASAP. So I might do it that way. We'll see. But I'll if you follow me, like, and that's the other thing, follow my stuff, and then I'll keep you updated.
Yeah. So, all right, beautiful. Let's we'll outro. So we have guys. We like this is a awesome epic convo. Like.
Absolutely,
I loved it.
Likewise,
yeah,
absolutely.
I'm ridiculously impressed with the everything on the journey level, everything on the way that the gifts are being actualized, and everything on like your super high level awareness about like exponential technologies and where things are being taken in that front. So, guys, all of Zeb's links are in the bio below. So. In the bio, you can find the Spotify link. Highly recommend that. YouTube, you can watch a bunch of the good videos, content as well with the music. and then also his Instagram page. So you can find those links, go and follow him, support him, subscribe, follow on YouTube, and give the content a listen. And then let us know your thoughts in the bio below, or in the comments below. Let us know your thoughts about not only the episode, but let us know your thoughts about Zeb's music. So go and check it out. Maybe drop a comment about the music. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, always like feedback for sure.
Yeah, love to hear from you. And then keep supporting all of the artists, the entrepreneurs, the spiritual leaders, the people in your communities that are trying to build the more beautiful future our hearts know is possible. So support them, help them flourish. You can find all of Simulation, our show's links in the bio below. Go and build the future. Execute your dreams. Manifest them into the world. We love you very much. Thank you for tuning in.
Are you ready for the last story? I'm going to tell them about the song.
Okay,
Real
Zeb
quick.
is going to tell you about the song, and then we are going to play Dreams and then end the stream.
Okay, so this one's really special to me, right? So I'm like head over heels for this girl. And it's really strange because like we're not hanging out a lot. She's super busy. So it's like kind of this disjointed relationship, but we're like super into each other. It didn't work out, but it was like the kind of apex of that. Just like, and it was so weird because it was all this emotion that wasn't like, there was nowhere to put it because we weren't able to see each other because we were so busy. So we were dreaming about each other a lot.
Wow.
Right. And I finally kind of bring it up, and it felt a little corny or whatever, but I was like, I got a dream. She's like, that's funny. Like I've been dreaming about you too. And basically, and I'll never forget how she said this. She says, you can't tell me, because my family, not me, but my family believes that if you tell someone about your dreams, then it won't, or your dream, especially if it's about them, it's not going to come true.
Oh, wow.
And so the whole crux of this song is that I was having so many of them that I figured, okay, maybe I can tell you about a few of the dreams, because all I need is one of the dreams to come true, and then we're good. Then everything's perfect. Yeah. And again, it fell apart, and it didn't quite work out. But I think that was a moment, like that was very much a moment of feeling just like overdosed on romance. Yeah. Like in that time, it was like there was so much of it, and it was all kind of imaginary, because we didn't get to see each other in like the physical, like barely at all. Like we probably were like in the same room 6 times over this relationship, like very few times, but it was, the vision of it was there, and it was so real that it's like I didn't even need the other part. So that and I think this song like kind of
so good.
Yeah. So this one's like super special to me. This is probably my favorite song on the album. So I'm glad we're premiering it, world premiere right here. So,
Wow.
yeah. So feel the vibes.
Love that.
It's
amount of meaning.
It's a
packed
lot of
into this
it's a
song.
lot of
I love
romance
it.
in this one. This
I
one's
love it.
dripping with it. So
Love it.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Much love. Enjoy Dreams.
Just gonna chill by the fire.
That's right.
Sip on some.
We're in the mountains of town. It's just the two of us. There's no one around for miles in any direction you can point in. The stars aren't lonesome now. No, there's too many of them. There were so few in the city. I guess it was me that was lonely anyhow. I checked the music, had to turn it up. Smoke so good we had to roll a crutch. Champagne in the snow, we was in the hot tub. We escaped from LA, I guess we'd had enough. You didn't rough. Now it's just around the time that I realized I was dreaming. And I know you told me not to tell you if I think about you when I sleep, cause then my dream won't come true. But I've been having so many dreams with you in them, I figured that I could tell you about a few. It's your skin in the moonlight, it's them big dark eyes, it's how you say everything just right, like you've been reading my mind. I know the air is freezing cold, damn it's so good to have you back home. Through the mountains all covered in snow, the only place I've always known. Check the music, had to turn it up. Smoke so good, we had to roll a crutch. Champagne in the snow, we was in the hot tub. We escaped from LA, I guess we had enough. You didn't even pack, you just grabbed your clutch. We'll get everything we need when we get there, no need to fuss. And that was just around the time that I realized I was dreaming. And I know you told me not to tell you if I think about you